I'm on that overload, overkill. I'm redline and I'm blue pills. High octane's my intake. I'm P. Swayze, man, point break. Make no mistakes, I don't care. Not one shit will be given here. Make the room shake, earthquake, turbulence, outer space, yeah, let it go. Cruise control, full speed ahead with my eyes closed. I smoke the best, just hydro. Make my eyes red like Diablo. I'm taking off, next to go. Molotov, set the blow. These crimson eyes, I set the glow. Medieval shit, man, crossbows. We dangerous, beast mode. Got catapults for the bags of dope, man, set in stone, good to go. Found my zone in the Alamo, yeah, big time. Dinosaur, so big, colossal. You stuck in dirt, man, fossils. We taking out full throttle, let's go. Yelling in the sky, singing. Rolling free, go hard, singing. Yelling in the sky, singing. Okay, get it, got it.
Well, it's March 20th, 2020. And from the Troy Lee Design Saloon, you're watching the Whiskey Throttle Show. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Today we've got a different vibe. We are calling it the Safety Show. And no, it doesn't have anything to do with the Wuhan, China virus. This is focused on safety in the sport of motocross. Joining us are certified athletic trainer Eddie Casillas and emergency room trauma doc Dr. John Bodnar, who's been part of the Alpine Stars Medic unit since the very beginning. And we're going to just discuss some different concepts and ideas and facts regarding safety in the sport. So it should be a little bit different, but pretty cool, something that everybody can take something away from. So that should be a lot of fun. I'm David Pingree. I'm your host. With me, as always, Grant Langston, my co-host. Welcome, GL. Donnie Bales, our producer.
What's going on, guys?
And of course, our guest, Eddie Casillas, is up here with us already.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Eddie.
Hey, thanks for having me. Awesome.
Yeah, glad to have you on, man. You're brought to us, all the guests, by Yamaha. Yamaha are the leaders in the power sports industry, so go check all their line of products out, whether you're looking for something 2 wheels, 4, piano, music, generator. They make a lot of stuff, and we are really appreciative of their support. They make awesome products, so we're stoked to have them here. The Blue Crew, also brought to you by PowerDot. You can use Whiskey Throttle at checkout to get 20% off on all their products, and we're going to talk with Eddie a little bit about that in terms of injury rehabilitation and recovery. Certainly effective and proven. Method Race Wheels bringing you our front-end chatter segment. Troy Lee Designs bringing you our TLD Timeout. We got SKDA Graphics. Man, if you have not seen the new set of Whiskey Throttle Show graphics they did for us, these are going to be available soon for all makes and models, and they are fire. These guys are so good. Every design they come out with, man, I'm just loving it. These guys are amazing. 4Wheel Parts bringing you our Get At Me Q&A. Adidas, stoked to have them on board. Don't be a dick to your feet. Put yourself in some good shoes. And there's a couple of Troy Lee Designs collaborations they've done that are really cool. I was just actually wandering around in the showroom before the show and saw a pair I'd never seen, which happens around here. So I'm going to go and see if I can sneak a pair of those out of here. They're great. Pro Circuit, stoked to have them back for another year with us. Just spoke with Mitch last night. Big fan of their products, big believer in them. I just see the work that goes on behind the scenes. You can attest to how much dyno time they put in, how much time at the track they put in. They don't sell a product unless they know it works, and I appreciate that.
And they're more than just a pipe company. I think a lot of times people think pipe, but they do a lot.
No,
you look at it.
Really, they're the only one-stop shop. You can take your bike there. You can get all your exhaust needs, all your engine needs, all your suspension needs, hard parts needs, whatever you want. They sell it all there. And then they sell rental. They sell all the stuff that they use on the race team as well.
That they work with, yeah.
So you could literally drop your bike off and pick it back up a race machine. So I like that concept as well. Dunlop Tires, the leader in this sport and others, they're bringing you good traction. If you've not checked out the new MX-53 front, particularly, if you're riding hard pack, front and rear both, but regardless of the terrain, unless it's sand, try that 53 front. It's money. I like it with the 33 rear, but great tire. And Hilo Concepts also making some great products. We're stoked to have them on board. And you get a free gift over there. If anything you purchase, use the code Whiskey Throttle at checkout, you get a free gift. Fire Department Coffee. We got some backdraft espresso roast going on this morning.
Oh, it is strong.
Hitting the spot. Seat Concepts. Oh, also Fire Department Coffee, 20% off using Whiskey Throttle over there. Go check it out. They make K-Cups, every type of thing you can imagine. So whatever your fix is, if it's a one-cupper or you make pots of coffee, they sell it in all different ways. So get over there and check them out. It's run by firemen. They give 10% of their net proceeds to firefighter charities. They do awesome work over there. Awesome guys and an amazing product. Seat Concepts. Stoked to have these guys on board too. I just got a new project bike for Vital MX finished up. New seat on there from Seat Concepts, and they just sent me the whole thing. It's a base, foam, and cover wrapped, ready to go. Super comfortable. They make really comfortable saddles. Check those guys out. Specialized Bicycles. We were supposed to have Curtis in here today, but from Specialized, but the panic got to him, as it has many people. The Wuhan panic, and we're going to have to push his appearance till later on in the season.
It's racist to say Wuhan now.
No, it's not. Ebola, West Nile, Spanish flu. They're all named after a location.
What certain media outlets have been saying.
Hey, here's a tip. Don't watch the news. They're a bunch of dickheads, every one of them.
I like it.
God, the news is the worst. Stop panicking.
I don't call it the news. I call it the bad news.
Yeah, it is the bad news. It's fake news.
The problem is everyone's in a panic because they think they need to be, but nothing actually changed. No one knows anyone that's gotten it.
Yeah, I know. Name somebody that's dead from it. I know it has killed
just
people.
turn on the news.
I get that
someone died.
I get it's serious, but let's keep our wits about us here. No wonder the government doesn't tell us if 51 is real. We lose our shit. Can you imagine?
Yeah,
We
exactly.
can't handle a flu. Can you imagine if they said, "Hey, listen, guys,
There's aliens.
there is aliens. This spaceship." We'd have toilet paper stacked to the ceilings. Well, I don't know why that's our go-to crutch.
At our shop, yesterday was like a ghost town. But like 2 doors down is an ammo shop, and there was a line from the ammo shop through past the front of the door.
Donnie was probably in line.
I know. And my parents were like, "It's a virus. What are you going to do? Shoot it out of me?"
Hey, did you see GL? Did you see me in line?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Listen to Wheezy over there. Just
I figured the best thing is maybe put some gun racks on some UTVs, and that might.
Oh,
sell
dude,
them.
you should just. I'm telling you, you should just open your doors and go. Hey, listen. You know what goes really well with ammo? A UTV will get you out of town.
Yeah.
No problem.
It'll outrun the virus.
you can run over zombies.
You can run
in
over.
this thing.
Just go buy some gun racks, put them on your UTVs, and just go. Look what we have here.
Toilet paper holders.
Oh, yes.
And milk holder. You need a milk.
All right, let's
jugs.
just close the shop up right now. Let's be done with the show and just go make toilet paper roll holders.
and milk racks.
Anywho, Specialized Bicycles. If you're going to pedal something, check those guys out. Best bikes in the business, hands down. It's not even close.
You can pedal your way from the zombie apocalypse.
You can literally just look at those bikes and go, yeah, that's a better bicycle than anything else out there. The craftsmanship, the manufacturing process, these guys kill it. And lastly, but not least, OGO, our newest sponsor. We're stoked to have them on board for all your baggage needs, backpacks, boot bags, helmet bags,
Hydration packs.
gear bags, travel bags.
Accessory. They have jackets and hats. And
They got
stuff.
all
This
kinds of
is good,
stuff.
yeah.
And it's great stuff.
Yeah. When we go trail riding, everyone has the OGO with the hydration pack, and you can put your tools, and it's designed for all that. So
Rum and Coke mixes nicely in there, I guess.
yeah,
Right?
maybe a little Tito's if you're feeling froggy.
We pride ourselves on really just partnering with the best brands. We're very picky about it, and run through this list of partners we have. It's the best in the business, period. So we're really excited about all these people. OGO is bringing you the What's in the Bag segment, which is fun. That's going to get weirder and weirder as we go on, but you'll see that. Let's jump right into our Method Race Wheels front end chatter. Eddie, this is where we kind of talk about some current events, and it's pretty obvious where this is headed. Method Race Wheels bringing you the lightest, strongest, fastest wheels for your truck, van, sprinter, UTV. Go over to methodracewheels.com and get 20% off on a set of wheels using the code Whiskey Throttle. We're going to discuss the series situation, cancellation. I mean, what do we run? 8 rounds?
Well, it's not canceled though. The next 5 rounds are.
But I'm saying,
we missed one. We got 4 more.
It's indefinitely postponed. They don't know for sure if they're going to run the last rounds.
So there's a very good chance.
At the moment, there's still Vegas and Salt Lake.
But there's a very good chance those get canceled.
What are they going to have? Triple headers there at those 32 rounds?
Here's the most likely scenario I see playing out. There's no way we get all 18 rounds of this series in. It's just not going to happen.
It wasn't 18 to begin with.
17.
Whatever.
Ping's adding.
So
rounds.
you were right from the get-go.
Yeah.
They'll never get 18 in.
I nailed it. They're not going to drag. I don't see them dragging this out over the summer. You guys mentioned something about that, adding Monster Cup or something. I think that's insanity. The manufacturers won't stand for it. The riders aren't going to like that. I think your best bet is to hope that this virus tapers off a little bit before Vegas and Salt Lake. They run double headers at those rounds, Saturday night, Sunday, or Friday night, Saturday night, however you want to do it. and that gets them 4 more. That's
And they only lost 3.
respectable enough. You know, you could call that a legitimate championship. I think if you've got to call it at this many rounds right now, that's tough.
I agree.
It'll come with a huge asterisk, especially because Kenny and Eli are just 3 points apart.
Right. If they tried to call it right now, everybody would be, except for Kawasaki, their heads would blow up.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, there's a really good chance that's what happens.
Hey, didn't was it the MGM race when they had them in the arenas and they had double headers? They would change the track from one night to the other.
Go forward or backwards.
Yeah, something like that. That
Yeah.
might be interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Or if you did Friday night, and then have a similar layout but reshape jumps and things, and then flip it for the next. I think that could be interesting. And you brought up a good point earlier, which was, I know you said it's insanity to think that they could finish the Supercross series later in the year. It's obviously possible. It probably is a stretch, but like Eddie had mentioned, hey man, it might be an opportunity for them to see, do people react well to it? Is this something they could do in the future? It'll be interesting to see. I mean, a lot of people are losing a lot of money, and we've not seen something like this. You know, it's not a rider strike. This is just horrible timing and luck. And I do think it'd be a shame if it ended, even if it was just 2 more rounds. I still think that'd be a bit of a shame. And then, unfortunately, if you're Tomac or someone maybe who does win the title, you're always going to have to hear about it for the rest of your life. Oh, yeah, but, that wasn't a normal year. And he's like, yeah, but I had the most points when they called it. So I think it's a shitty situation all around. Best case scenario is, like you said, this blows by hopefully quicker than we could ever hope for, and then run 4 more rounds. But
listen, they used to start the Nationals before the end of the Supercross series. They could run one Supercross at the break of motocross.
No.
Why not?
They went away from that for a reason.
I personally
think it's a really bad idea.
I get it, but it's not like you want to do this every year. It's like this is a special
the teams are going to. I think that's where the teams will sort of put their foot down, because with the way racing's changed over the years, it's not like before where they're like, oh, we just put in a stiffer spring setting. Teams shift their operation, their setup, and everything, and I just think they would all resist on that one.
The other thing you mentioned, there is a 2-week break between Salt Lake City and the start of the Nationals.
But it's one weekend.
Maybe they fill that weekend with a race. Again, teams aren't going to love it, but hopefully right now they're getting some outdoor testing done that they would have got done in that break, and we could fill that last weekend.
But Salt Lake could get upset, right? Because they wanted to be the last Supercross.
Yeah, well, shit happens a little bit here.
You could run 2 races at Salt Lake again. Another race next weekend at Salt Lake. It's already set up.
Yeah. I think the hard part's going to be scheduling stadiums that late.
And here's the other problem is baseball is starting to go on, so you can't have it at a baseball stadium. It has to be a football stadium.
Qualcomm.
Yeah, Qualcomm back in action.
Probably get that sucker cheap.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you can.
Hey, where did we just? Who just said? Oh, Kurt just said they run it for like for a dime. For nothing.
They didn't even really charge them. They just took concessions. Yeah.
Hey, can we have that? Oh yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, anyway. I'll go sell hot dogs and beer, be a millionaire in one night. $15 each.
Toilet paper.
Yeah.
So that's pretty weird. So the other part of that is, are these champions going to have an asterisk next to their name? I mean,
well, weren't you? Was it Ohio when they got canceled? Weren't you in the points race for that? And
somebody won from that. Somebody won because of that race.
And some pissed off
because of that race.
That was one round, and there was
one.
You could have DNF'd that race, GL.
Could have. I could have gone 1-1.
You could have.
Remember what I always said? If
this and buts were candy nuts, it'd be Christmas every day.
If my aunt had balls, would have been mine.
Oh yeah.
So there's some upset people because of doing that. So they got to find something that.
And what about the 250 series?
That's even more screwed up. I was actually just talking to my brother-in-law Jade. I'm like, that would be weird if that was called, because if you look at it the way it's going, the East Coast is pretty much scheduling. It's done. That's going to be hard. I don't know. To me, it just seems so weird to go, yeah, man, we just got the series going and congrats.
Yeah, I know. Well, at least if they did, if they could pull off Vegas and Salt Lake, you could do sort of Vegas format where it's like you're qualifying as your heat race, and it's basically main event, main event. You did East Main and West Main, East Main, West Main. You know what I mean? You could still sneak in.
You for sure could do
4
that.
races.
The way they used to do it, too. They did it that way.
The way we keep going around here, I can only imagine there's people out there right now. It's like, what are we doing when the phone's ringing?
Yeah.
Meetings being called.
Well, what about
emails sent?
What about the guys that were injured and maybe said, "Hey, season's done," but now here we are adding some races at the end of the season? Those guys could play a factor too, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is
AC
no one
coming
has
back.
any idea what's going to happen. I mean, that's the reality. We're all kind of spitballing at the moment. But
Yeah. No, there's no
there's
word coming out of Feld, and they don't know because they're waiting to see.
Just stay tuned to Dino's Instagram. He's the one that called the cancellation. So just look at his Instagram and we'll know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something, though. It's like I went to sit down Saturday night, and I'm like, man, there's no racing on. And they re-aired Atlanta and Dallas, which out of order. But I sat and watched both of them back to back again.
Really?
Like, well, there's nothing here. I can just watch this.
Same results both times?
They did. It did end up with the same.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
I pretended.
Even
I went
though
into
they showed them in
yeah.
the
I
reverse
meditated.
order?
I pretend like I've never seen it before, and I'm like, yeah, this is good.
Well, all right. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously Feld has nothing to do with this. You can't blame anybody. It's nobody's fault. This is basically
It's unprecedented.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. There's never been anything this dramatic.
Well, and
happen before.
in the bigger scheme, it's just everybody's staying healthy, right? It's all that matters.
Yeah, and it's funny, we talked about this a little bit before the show, we had SARS, we had MERS, we had Ebola, we had all these things, and nothing caused this kind of panic, and is it the social media? Is it the news and what they've become?
I think also part of it was, if you look at this has become a truly worldwide, you look at a lot of other diseases that were isolated in parts of Africa or parts of Asia, or, and that's what made people concerned. This was, hey, it originated here, and then it seemed like in about 2 to 3 weeks, it was pretty worldwide. Mm-hmm. So when it's a world problem, then everybody's in the same boat. And I think on this one, it did seem, I don't want to say like everyone overreacted, but I think there's two ways to look at it. If you say it's not a big deal and everyone lives their normal life and it is easily spread, people are going to be upset saying things weren't done. When you react like this, some people take it to another level and have to get 6,000 rolls of toilet paper.
Yeah.
Because who cares if you die of starvation or dehydration? At least your asshole will be
Your
clean.
butt's so clean. So clean.
Dude, I live right by the Ralphs. I mean, Jill and I live close to each other. The store, I leave this morning and the lines around the store.
Same.
And I'm like, what are you guys waiting for?
I left the fire station this morning and there was a line around the building.
I go
at our grocery store by the shit.
But see, I don't know if Ralph's is like just metering him in one guy at a time, or if it's. Do you guys remember that there was a game show where they would send people loose in the supermarket to go run and grab all the items or something, come back?
I remember vaguely.
Yeah, that's what it probably looks like in there.
They're
just running in there, running.
I don't know, but it sounds like a show I really need to watch. Sounds super exciting. Well, with no sport on, I might actually take that out.
Right. No, dude. The real bummer, I mean, obviously the health issue is a bummer, but the fact is that there's a lot of people losing a lot of money. And I don't mean it in terms of like rich guys losing money, but there's people, real people lives are being affected financially because of this. And that's really scary.
Yeah. Well, so, and that's the trade-off, right? Like, yeah, we want to be cautious. We want to be pragmatic about how we approach it. But the panic, that is what is so disappointing. If you work in a place where it's an open building, there's space between you, there's no reason for you to not come to work.
Hey, and is it only in America that we have this toilet paper issue? Because nowhere else in the world are you seeing people hoarding toilet paper. I think it's just that other countries got to be looking at us.
Well, other countries are like food, water, essentials. Yeah. No, here it's like, gotta have lots of toilet paper.
And ammo.
Because I gotta lay it down and pad the toilet just in case there's some virus there too.
This is why the rest of the world hates America.
Yeah.
Because our priorities are toilet paper.
Sometimes I hate us. We're annoying.
Are you self-loathing or are you just everybody else?
I don't want to piss everybody off, but if you're one of those people with 95 rolls of toilet paper in your house right now,
screw you.
Screw you.
Yeah.
Hey, go over to whiskeythrottlemerch.com and pick up some stuff. We got some really cool new shirts. Some Whiskey Throttle. None of us are wearing the standard logo tee, but we got them in all colors now. So no matter what kind of bike you ride, we've got one to match you.
I'm wearing the hat.
Yeah, well, you're not on camera, so no one cares.
I don't like seeing myself.
Anyway, it's the basic Whiskey Throttle Show logo. Anyway, check them out. WhiskeyThrottleMerch.com. Pick up some stuff. Oh, and P.S. while we're at it, the next 5 orders, we're going to send out these Rocket Rex Staten signed Daytona Supercross winter posters that he signed for us. So, zoom in. They're bad.
I actually grabbed one of those from him because I thought it was so cool.
Yeah, so get over there and pick some stuff up. Thanks to Temecula T-shirt printers for taking care of us over there. And get over to Mad Skills Motocross. They've got their World Tournament going on, as well as a new Mad Skills Motocross coming out. It's not out just yet, but stay tuned. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, Eddie, let's get to you. Tell us about your background and how you got involved in the sport of motocross.
Well, growing up, traditional sports, soccer, stuff like that. And then I had a friend who introduced me to BMX, and that kind of opened that avenue in that direction. So from BMX, then hanging around with those group of kids led to skateboarding. And behind my house, we had some hills and stuff. And every morning on the way to school, I'd always see a couple dirt bikes taking off, going in the hills, and that was like pretty cool. And I remember going back in the back and watching them ride. And at the time, I knew nothing about motocross. I'd watched some of the races on TV in the Coliseum and stuff, but it was always cool to watch these guys ride. And then as a young kid, this is 3rd, 4th grade, I would try to follow them out on the tracks that they were riding, and that was interesting. But anyway, that was my first experience with that. And then as I went through school, I had an experience where one of my friends, he ate crap riding a bicycle, a BMX bike, and we were out in the hills, and just pretty much instinct took over. I told him he was crying. I didn't panic. I said, I'll be back. I went and got some help. Saw a garage with a dirt bike in it, knocked on the door. The guy took off on his bike, tried to get my friend. He didn't want to come down. Regardless, the ambulance was called, went to the hospital. He lost some teeth. But in that moment, one of the doctor's nurses was like, hey, man, that was really cool what you did. You didn't panic. You didn't freak out. That's awesome. Most kids wouldn't do that. So that, and then in combination with the BMX, the skateboarding, I kind of like, man, this might be something I like to do. The adrenaline was pretty cool. Like, being a paramedic, that there's some type of adrenaline when you're helping others and stuff, and it's really cool. So as I was going on through my high school career, and counselors are asking you what you want to do, I was like, man, I want to do something that involves these kind of sports and healthcare, something, I want to help these. And they said, all right, well, maybe physical therapy, athletic training, that's something that you might want to do. So that's kind of where my avenue was at the beginning. And so I pursued that avenue. But in between that time, I went in the military for a little bit.
Was that right out of high school?
Right out of high school in the military. And so when I got out of the military, correct. Yeah. And when I got out of the military, I went to school at a clinic, again, trying to get some hours to get into these programs. And it was at this clinic.
Let me back up real quick. So when you enlisted, you became a military medic, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And you went to Desert Storm, you did?
Yes. Deployed there, Desert Storm, Desert Shield.
Okay.
And so when I got out, I was pursuing my career, getting some hours to get to college because I needed you to have some hours in field experience.
Sure.
And I worked at a clinic, and at this particular clinic that I worked at, it was unique because that's where I met the motocross guy. So this was kind of my start to what would become my career. So the front office lady's like, hey, listen, I'm going to put you up with these guys. They're a little bit of a troublemaker. They don't show up to their appointments. They're kind of rough, but we'll see how you do with them. So I was like, all right, fine. I'll take the challenge. And when they came in and they rode dirt bikes, I'm like, oh, I ride BMX and I skate and stuff and snowboard, and like, oh, cool. And I would just talk to them. Like, the guy, for example, first guy I met, Russ Wageman, and then Eric Kehoe. Those are the first 2 motocross guys that I met, and they wanted to ride. I'm like, yeah, you can ride. Like, well, they're telling me I can. I'm like, I don't see why you can't. Just, be smart about it.
Don't crash.
Yeah, and so then they're like, okay. So then they would come to the next appointment, and we'd work on them, whatever, they were hurting from at that point in time, and they would get through it, and then they'd keep coming back, and then they would send more moto guys. So the lady, the front office manager, is like, hey, I don't know what is it with you and these guys, but now we're getting more of these types of people coming in. And I'm like, you just got to know how to relate to them. And they want to ride just like football players want to play football. And
right.
You telling them not to, they're going to go somewhere else. So that was my entry into the sport. And then over the years, I mean, I met a lot of great people. I said Kehoe and Russ Mageman were the first that I met, and then through them, Bob Rathkamp, and then Healy over at InStyle, and all those guys rode, and then they would just send their guys too. And so at one point in time, it was Russ Wageman who had a Pit Pro. He had a small little team, and he's like, "Hey, listen, you want to come out to a race and just work with my guys?" I think it was Chris Wheeler and a couple others. And I'm like, "Yeah, that would be awesome."
What year was this roughly?
I got out in 92, so right around there, like 92, 93, in that time frame.
Were you at a clinic like up in the valley or something?
It was up in Santa Cruz Valley.
Santa Cruz, yeah.
And I still hadn't gone to school yet, so I was kind of still working on it. And then I left for school, for college, and then I came back to the same clinic. And then when that happened is when then I was like, hey, I'm an athletic trainer. Now I can be a little bit more of a service to you guys. And that's when it really picked up from there.
You went to UNLV to get your degree.
Yeah, okay. Went to UNLV.
And then when you came back, you got connected with Yamaha of Troy, if I remember right.
Yeah, so like I said, Russ Wageman kind of got me in the door. And then when I came back, working with Kehoe, and he had a rider, it was Casey Lytle, who had gotten injured, and he wasn't getting any better. And he's like, hey, can you help me with this guy? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And so being that Casey lived up there, he was able to come into the clinic. And I remember Kehoe saying, look, we have a bye weekend, so that gives us some time. And so I was able to help him, get him the care that he needed, and he was able to return to racing. And at that point, Kehoe's like, hey, listen, if you ever have any ambitions of maybe doing something in this sport, I can probably try to help facilitate that. I mean, you do a good job. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's check this out. So that was kind of my entry in there. I started working with Lighthole, going to some of the races with Kehoe, and just being there in whatever capacity that they needed me, whether it was taping or stretching or whatever.
Okay.
And then once I get in there, that's when I met, I don't know if there's an old trainer, Al Gerke was a guy. He was like Ron's guy and stuff, and he was pretty well connected at that time. And he's the one that connected me with Dr. Bodnar and Dr. Augustine, who they were putting together this medical program. And this was like in its infancy. And they're like, yeah, you need to talk to these guys because I think they're going to do something pretty big in the sport, and you could definitely be a part of that. So that was my entry. And once that happened, the rest is history.
And I think I met you because you were maybe helping Casey Johnson when he was at YOT.
Yeah. So
that's how we met.
Yep.
Yeah.
So at YOT, Ron was there, Ernesto, and then Buckaloo was there, and through those guys, that was just kind of my entryway into meeting you and Dostal and Ivan and all those guys.
So then, you were with the medic unit, asterisk medic unit at the time, from the very inception of it?
Yeah, so Dr. Augustine and Dr. Bodnar and Tom Carson, those three individuals had this idea, and they're like, hey, we need to put this program together. And it was Dr. Augustine, who was an orthopedic, had said, hey, listen, a big part of any sports medical team is an athletic trainer. They're like your donkey, so to speak. They can do anything and everything. The workhorse. And so I met Dr. Bodnar, and he's like, yeah, just, turn in your application. I'm like, okay, cool. I can't see that many other athletic trainers applying for this job. And so a few weeks go by. I think it was like maybe a couple months go by, and I didn't really hear anything. And then I caught wind that he was interviewing massage therapists. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Why would you hire a massage therapist over an athletic trainer? So I sent him, I don't even know if he's kept it, but I sent them kind of a pretty blunt email or post that's like, hey, I don't know why you're doing this. You need to hire an athletic trainer. If it's not me, I get it. If I don't fit your program, great, but you need to have an athletic trainer. So he ends up calling me back, and he's laughing. He's like, hey, man, you were hired from the beginning. You're our guy. But I can't pass up free massages. Like, they're giving me hour-long massages. So I'm 2 months into like a free weekly massage. So you're in the program. Everything's going to get, figured out, and we'll get you on board. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. No problem. I'm in.
Nice. And I feel like maybe your military time was a big benefit, like made you a really good fit for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's because, when you're out there on the track in the middle of a race, it's chaotic. I got to imagine that's what it's like pulling a guy out of.
Yes, absolutely. Being in the military, just being in the military in general, they do a good job of teaching you how to be calm under fire, so to speak, being able to step back, assess a situation regardless of what's going on, communicate with people, and just do the things that's necessary to not make the situation worse. And in a worse situation, make it the best outcome possible is kind of how, and being a medic, the experience that I got being in the service and being deployed, all those things really paid off when I joined the at that time was the Asterix Mobile Medical Center.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said for that, because you just cannot really teach people how to not panic. I think it's one of those things, some people have it, some people don't, but one way you find out is putting them in situations like that. I mean, we've seen it, I've seen it several times, even like Donnie, you can relate, like with aviation, pilots get taught how to fly, but the minute something goes wrong, you hear about pilots that just panicked and it caused the crash, whereas other pilots, like you said, assess the situation, where's the nearest landing, how high are we, how far can we whatever the thing may be. And that's just something I think people either sort of have or they don't. Can you control that emotion or that adrenaline when it really counts, or are you just going to be someone that kind of self-destructs?
Yeah.
And in Supercross and motocross, the one difference between that sport and any other sport that an athletic trainer would be involved in is they don't stop the race. Like in football, it's an injury timeout, basketball injury timeout. You go, it's just you in the dock, whomever. But in moto, I mean, as long as the person isn't laid out in the main line, chances are they're going to keep going. They'll move guys so that you're protected to a certain point. But I mean, you got to be able to. You got bikes flying by you, and someone that's not used to that. I mean, the noise of a bike would startle you. But if you can work in that environment, then
if you're working on a down rider and Bosch is just coming through the rhythm section, you might think you're about to get landed on.
Yes. Well, listen, I can tell you from a fire department paramedic, which is what they're using now in a lot of places, or ambulance medics. You just basically apply if you want to come and help. Our number one deal is personal and personnel safety, right? And so you put those guys in that situation where you're going, okay, you got to get out there and get that guy. They're going to put a tough block up to make sure other guys don't hit you. Like, that's not normal. Those guys are going to be like,
If you didn't grow up around bikes, it is very intimidating to step even to the edge of a track when guys are coming.
Absolutely. Yeah. So to me, you brought a huge value to that program. And I think that's going to be tough to replace, my own personal opinion. We're not going to get into all that. But so your specialty is injury rehab, injury management, and training now, correct?
Yes. Well, athletic trainers, they're healthcare professionals, and they are, like I said, they're the workhorses in the healthcare field. They know a little bit of everything. They do nutrition, strength and conditioning, rehab, equipment stuff, because you never know where you're going to end up. You can end up in a high school with like zero budget, so you're everything. You're the school psychologist, you're the nurse, you're everything. You're the mom, the everything.
It's kind of like being a medic that way, where you have they call it an ocean of knowledge, but the ocean's only an inch deep.
Yes, exactly. Or you can end up, at in the NFL where your job requirement is really narrow and you're just taping feet and being on the field and doing some of the rehab. You don't have to worry about the equipment stuff, the nutrition stuff, all that's handled. So they give you that broad spectrum of knowledge, and then you kind of start tailoring it to wherever your environment is.
So let me ask you this. Do you have any kind of, from your experience in all the years, how many years were you with the medic unit?
It was 17 years, I think, right around there. I mean, in the industry, it was probably like 20, some years, and I'm still in there a little bit, but it's probably about close to 20.
So in that time, do you have any specific ideas or suggestions for how riders can prevent injury, whether you're an amateur or a pro? Like, what would be some suggestions you'd give to guys?
I think from the very beginning, from when I came in even to now, I mean, and it's improved. I mean, I think the mentality's gotten a little better. But I remember when I first came in, I mean, like working with you and stuff, when I mentioned, hey, we're going to do some deadlifts, and you're like, no, that's not going to happen. If it's heavy weights, I ain't touching it. I'm going to get pumped up. But if you see some of the Instagram posts nowadays, you actually have riders that are doing deadlifts, and even some are getting a little bit more crazy with some of the stuff they're doing. But they're lifting a little bit more heavier weight, and in doing so, you're strengthening everything from muscles to bones to be able to take a load. And I've explained it to some of the riders this way. As I said, look, we know, and actually Troy Lee's the one that was a big part of this, but we did some testing where we had accelerometers and we were looking at how many G-forces a rider was going through on the track. And I think we were at Glen Helen, and some of the guys, I mean, they were hitting on some of the jumps like 18 Gs. I mean, it's only for just, hundredths of a second. But that adds up. If every jump face is X amount of G's and every landing is this, and you're going for 20 minutes, I mean, it adds up. So I was trying to explain to the riders, I mean, listen, now that we know this, you know what a G-force is, it's your body weight times X amount. So if you can only squat 100 pounds versus a guy that can squat, let's say 300, that guy can tolerate that load. And if you put it into G's going into the face of a jump or landing, that will affect them a lot less than the guy that can only do 100 pounds.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
if you're going 20 minutes, so then you can make that connection. Or prior to that, I could try to sell it to them all day long. But now when you can kind of put it in that perspective.
Well, there's some science to go, yes. Hey, it's not just an opinion. This is something that,
yeah.
Well, and there was no science in the early 90s, or, probably when you first came in. It was, it was rudimentary.
Yeah, the only science, and it was actually a pretty good study. I think it was it Johnson and a couple other guys, I think Ward, they went to UCLA and they did some research, but they were just trying to figure out, it was more like cardio, like, hey, what can these guys do? And it was pretty well done. I know, who was it? Was it RJ that was on the treadmill and they're doing a VO2 test and the guy's like, hey, as soon as your heart rate gets to here and you start feeling tired, then we're going to get you off the treadmill. And the exercise physiologist was looking at him and it got to the deflection point, but he wasn't getting tired. And the lady's freaking out, like stopping the treadmill. Hey, you need to stop. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm just getting warmed up. And she's like, no, your heart's going to like blow up. And he's like, no, I'm not. It's not even fading me. So it just goes to tell you like what they can push through physiologically. And
was that the infamous study where it was like World Cup soccer is maybe the only sport that's more physically demanding than most.
Yeah, they were looking at like, I think at that time, because Ward used to be a big strength guy, powerlifting guy, and I think he was crushing the leg. I don't know how much they ran out of room on the machine for his weight, but then RJ was like the cardio guy, and it was a pretty cool deal that they did to kind of prove that, hey, these moto guys are legit. So.
Yeah.
So did they start to be receptive to that then as you?
Yeah, absolutely. And then
I know you and you trained with me in what, 2001 and 2?
Yep.
You were doing personal.
The training with some of the guys, and we did that. And I remember you were kind of like, "Hey, I need to do my balancing on the ball with my dumbbells." I'm like, "Okay, we'll do that. If that makes you happy, we'll do that. If I can throw this in there too." And it's like, "Okay, well, we're kind of trading on what we can do." But and now the progression, the key, training words that they use is like functional movement, stuff like that, where you still do your bench press and your deadlifts, but now we're doing some kettlebells where you're kind of single leg stuff, single arm stuff. Now you're incorporating your hip stability, core stability, shoulder stability, because sport is like that. Sport is never just
isolated.
Body part. In moto, you got your pegs and you got your feet and you're holding onto the bike, which is definitely taken into consideration. But again, if you're going in a corner, you got to balance the outside peg, one leg's out. There's a lot of stuff going back and forth. So
also with injuries, range of motion, and if I noticed, have shoulder surgery or something. If you're using a bar, you're sort of compensating with your good side. But if you got even weight dumbbells, there's no cheating.
Yes. And that's also too with injury prevention is telling the guys, listen, we don't need to lift super big, but we need to be able to support your body weight. If you can't support your body weight, you can't support yourself when you take a tumble on the track. Yeah. And knowing the rider style, like if you take a Marvin, he's really smooth versus if you take like a Barshu is pretty erratic on the bike, and they may take a different approach in their training. The basics will still be the same, but hey, this guy probably need to strength training a little bit more. He's finds himself on the deck a couple more times than this guy does. So just knowing your rider, their style, and their background and stuff plays a big part.
And when you talk about functional movement too, burpees or something like that, where you're using literally every body part, is that kind of more of?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would fit into that.
Yeah, you can. Different trainers will have different approaches, but you all pull from the same types of exercises, and that's how you combine them. And then knowing your athlete, what they can do, like you're not going to give someone that can't do a push-up, you're not going to have them do a burpee because they're not going to do it right. And then someone that can't support their body weight when they come down from that burpee, it's a little bit of some speed coming down, so they got to be able to support their body weight first. So knowing how to do that's really important. Analyzing and testing your athletes and seeing where they're going to start from, and that's also in any sport, any environment, that's also something really difficult to do, because you want the kid that wants to win that season and he can't even do 5 push-ups. It's like, well, bro, if you can't do 5 push-ups, we can't be doing this kind of exercise. We got to work to that. Yeah. And I think when going back to the original question is, one of the reasons why a lot of people get into these action sports is because it's their own thing. They can do what they want, and they excel at it. Where in traditional stick and ball sports, it's a little bit more regimented, which most of us don't do good with that. But in a sense, it does help because a lot of those athletes get introduced to weightlifting at an early age, whether it's just body weight. But it's not unheard of to have kids in middle school lifting weights that are playing, football and baseball. Where moto guys, some of them go their whole career and never even go to the gym.
Yeah.
So that plays a big role in injury prevention.
And I read something not too long ago. The deadlift is actually the most efficient and effective overall movement that you can do in terms of building strength.
Yeah, there's an argument for that. Well, let's say if you only had to do one exercise, for strength, the deadlift would be the one because there's so much that's going on in that movement. And yeah, I believe that to be true.
It surprised me a little bit. I always, not that I don't do deadlift, but I'm not like this guy that throws on all the weight I can. Just trying to protect my back a little bit.
Well, if you think about it, to do the deadlift properly, you got to have good core stability. Your back has to be strong because otherwise you're going to round your back out. You have to have good hip mobility, ankle mobility, and then you're pulling the weight off the ground. So if your shoulders aren't strong, you ain't lifting the weight because you're going to pull your arms out of your socket, kind of, so to speak. So you're not going to do more than your body will tolerate, and if you do, you're going to hurt yourself. So that's how they look at it.
So something that I think has really come a long ways is warm up. Back in my day, it was practically non-existent. Maybe guys would run in place for a second before the race started or whatever. Now we've learned how important that is to have your body up to operating temp, just like your bike or your car. You wouldn't just start it up in the morning when it's 40 degrees out and then just mash it, unless it's a rental.
Yep.
In which case you go, dun, 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 dun,
It's warm now.
But how important is that? We see guys now on their spinner before a Supercross race spinning for 20 minutes. They're sweaty.
What's the other one? That concept with the
ski erg.
Ski erg. Yeah, warm up has always been important, and then how you warm up. Doing the ski erg and doing the airdyne and stuff like that, you're getting your tissue temperature up. But then you also have to move. So making sure that you move. Your warm-up includes movement, so lunges, and there's various different ways to go about doing that. And
even your sensory stuff, right? Like I stole something. I used to kind of steal stuff I'd see from different guys, and I think it was 2001 maybe. I saw Danny Smith, and before the races, he was like balancing on one foot, and he'd reach down and like cross over and touch the ground, and then so it's like you're getting your balance and your
getting
proprioceptiveness, all that stuff working, right? I thought, man, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think too is filling the time up between when you're warming up and getting out onto the track. That's definitely, you can do that. Just knowing your rider, some guys don't need that. But if you are just sitting around, then your mind starts to wander and it's not where it needs to be. So, a good trainer will be able to work with their athlete and figure out what they need. So obviously it's beneficial, and if it keeps them kind of occupied until they have to go down on the line, then so
there's that benefit too, right? Keeps their mind from overthinking what's about to come up.
You can some riders I know now they're working with sports psychologists, so they'll do some imaging, and that fills that gap too. They can start focusing on that, so they're getting ready to go out onto the track and do what they have to do. So definitely the balancing, throw it all in there.
And I think another part of what especially when you're racing and you've got nerves kind of building up towards a race, if you have a routine. Yes. Like, okay, we do this, then we jump rope for a minute, then we do that, whatever it is, and you do it every time, that becomes sort of calming.
Yes.
Right before your race. So there's the psychological effect of that as well.
Yeah, and having that in between, because that's the other thing that makes moto kind of unique is that you have these gaps, between the morning session, and you have, time qualifying, and then you have the evening session. There's a big gap in there, so you'll cool down, and then, whatnot. You maybe get a sprained ankle in between then. You got to manage that as well.
That can be a pain.
And we're seeing it, like I said, it's definitely improved at the pro level, but at an amateur level, it's the same. Guys roll up to the line. They might, like I said, run in place for a second or whatever, but then there's no warm-up.
Yeah.
Does that even do anything? Just like if a guy's just running in place for a second, does that really even do anything?
Boy, better than nothing. I
was going to say, they usually do it for like 20, 30 seconds.
Right behind the start line.
It gets the blood circulating at the very least. So I think it makes a difference. And even like they were alluding to, just the mental aspect, like, yep, I'm doing the right things. Anything that helps. But I also wanted to ask, because this was something that I found when I was done racing, is I kind of wish that people had explained to me that, from a young age, that yoga is not for girls only, and stretching is pretty important, whether it's before or I think most importantly afterwards. That was something I know that I neglected, and I got like all my hamstrings are tight. Everything's tight, and it's created long-term.
It's really tough.
Issues.
It's really tough because, like, I've tried to incorporate that with athletes from the beginning, or even like recovery. Like, hey, you don't need to go all out every day. Your body, if you're going, at some point in time, you have to reap the rewards of your training. But if you continuously keep going, you don't have that window to maximize, gains. You don't. Your body just breaks down. So stretching and stuff is a big part of it. Maybe taking a yoga class and stuff will help out. But to try to get a moto guy to, like, hey, you need to just relax. When you go to the yoga class, just use this time to unwind, like loosen up. No, they'll turn it into like a competition and who can do this. And next thing the guy's like hurting himself, But that's just, if you can change that mindset just a little bit and tell them, hey, listen, we need to throttle back a little bit, and then we'll reap the rewards during this window of the training you've been doing. So changing that mindset. And it's really difficult when I'll hear a kid's parents go, well, so-and-so's riding 5 days a week, 6 days a week. We need to be at that level. I'm like, no, you need to go up and down in your training, and eventually you're going to surpass this person because they're going to break down and you're going to keep going forward. But trying to sell it in the moment, it's really difficult.
Yeah, motocross guys are not wired that way. It's more has got to be better. Harder has to be better. Yeah. If this guy's doing this, I'm doing that.
Especially if that person's having some success, then it's like, that's the model.
That's the benchmark.
Yes. And you're just like, no. And that's the fight. I mean, you'll talk to a lot of strength coaches, athletic trainers, those that go to school and they study the science and they see how other sports are doing it and they know what's right, and then trying to find what's right within moto and, apply that. But then again, you're communicating with people that don't have that background. Maybe all they've ever done is moto, so it's really, really tough to get them to kind of change their ideas a little bit.
But when you got to have a guy like Carmichael, that Ping said when he would go ride with him, he goes, I can't ride. What did he say?
That volume.
It's 5 gallons of gas every single day.
And then you see his success. Everybody's going, well, that's the only way you do it.
Yeah. But then you get a guy like, his body type can handle that. And then plus he's been doing it from the beginning. You're not going to throw someone in there. And
I've heard people say that they try to do exactly what Ricky did, but they just couldn't. They couldn't, and it didn't actually work for them. They started going backwards.
You can't go from walking to sprinting. That's the problem. Yeah. If I had gone and stayed 4 or 5 months with Ricky and said, okay, I'm going to do half of what you do today, and the next week I'll do a little, gradually built up to it, I could have probably done it. I jumped in and went, I'm going to do your program. That was a horrible idea.
And that idea, that was early on in the stick and ball sports, and then someone came along with some authority and kind of changed it a little bit. That was really tough to change. I mean, football coaches, they say, this is how we did it when we were successful. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to hit pads every day of the week, and we're going to lift heavy every day of the week. And finally someone was able to kind of change that, and it worked. And like, oh, okay, maybe we can do that. And so in moto, it's the same thing. They're just trying to change that culture, that idea that, hey, less may be better.
And to touch on GL's point, stretching I think is so important. And I've ever since kind of Rhino pushed it on us, I started doing some yoga. And I for me, I'm so old and beat up, it helps me a lot. But it's kind of helped really cement the idea of the difference between dynamic and static stretching. If you are warming up, you do not want to do a static stretch, right? Like if you're cold, you don't want to just reach down and touch your toes or whatever. Push that stretch. You'll damage muscle fibers. It needs to be a dynamic stretch. So
I do it in the shower. I put the hot water on my back. And
talk a little bit about that and explain the differences.
So before we get into that, for the people that are watching and listening, and obviously you're in different parts of the country, maybe the world, is trying to find someone that is knowledgeable enough, and it doesn't have to be necessarily in moto, okay, but someone that's knowledgeable enough so you can get a proper evaluation. So we look at mobility. We're talking about, how you move. And different than stick and ball sports, moto, kids get broken off at an early age. They start getting, their ankles 3 or 4 times. So they lose mobility. So what mobility can you get back? And what mobility is just not going to be there because, the structure of your anatomy has changed.
Yeah.
And so doing a good evaluation, you can say, okay, this we can work on, okay? And there's something to be said too. And when you stretch, are you stretching the right things? Okay, so when we go to yoga, you also have to be careful because some places they'll push to the extreme when you don't need to. So there's ligament and muscle to stretch, and there's what we call capsule. If you stretch the capsule out, like in your hip or your shoulder, that's part of your stability. So then if you compromise that, now you're going to be too loose. Okay, so trying to find the balance and working with the right people is really essential. But the static warm up or the static stretching when you're done, that promotes lengthening of the muscle, stretching it out.
And so just explain it like for people who are
so static, just like it sounds.
You're literally sitting there, the hurdler stretch, whatever.
Holding it for 10 seconds, okay? And then dynamic, you're moving. So that's usually done in the beginning. You have a dynamic warm-up, you get on the erg and stuff like that, and you get the tissue temperature warmed up, and then you go through certain patterns of movements that you would experience when you're riding, okay? So you can do like walking lunges, you can do some torso twists and stuff like that, and then when you're done, then you do a static stretch. You hold it for 10 seconds and stretch the muscle out, and it's more just bringing down. You have this chaos of the training, and then you're just slowly kind of unwinding, stretching out, finishing off, and then heading out.
I just see people go, oh yeah, you got to stretch before you work out. So they'll be about to run, and they're just like, stretching, and I'm going, man, that's not. Yeah, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Hey, you were mentioning how all the riders before a race now warms up on Aerodyne or however they're doing it. Are they doing this before they're practicing every day too, or what are they doing there?
I think that's something that is has lacked, I should say, is sometimes what guys do on race day is not what they do at the practice track.
Right.
And I think that's a bit of a disconnect to me. If you've got a routine, try and keep it as routine, just like that.
But a lot of the guys like back east at Alden's and that, they're doing bike rides in the morning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they'll do a bike ride, come back, eat some breakfast, then go ride. So they're already kind of warmed up.
So knowing your rider, like, I've worked with guys where they don't have an Aerodyne and a sprinter van. They can take all that stuff to the track. So I'm like, look, go ride. So take this next 5-10 minutes when you're out on the track. So you're looking at the track. What are the conditions of the track? So on and so forth. And you're riding around. You're going to get some movement through there, and then slowly start ramping up. And then when you come back in, then we'll do some dynamic stretching.
Yeah.
So you can do it that way as well.
I always tell people do this is for a motocross track is when you go out for your first practice. If you aren't going to have a routine back at the truck to get yourself warmed up, go out and just stand up for 2 or 3 laps. All right, that's
just roll everything.
5-6 minutes. Just don't sit. And it'll slow you down enough that you're looking at the track, you're being safe, right? But it's also going to warm you up because it's tiring standing for an entire lap.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll warm your entire posterior chain. It gets your heart going, you're breathing. So I think that's a really good, and I stole that from Damon Huffman. Yeah. He used to do that all the time.
That's what we used to do when I was a kid. I mean, my dad was in South Africa when you came out of high school. At that time, it was mandatory to go and do at least two years in the military. So my dad even said, you go to the military, they teach you discipline, they teach you a lot of things. He's like 5 a.m, ding, 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 cold showers. And he brought me up a little bit like that because I remember he'd wake me up, we're going running. I'm like, it's pitch black. But he had that military sort of setup. And most of my amateur career was just that simple stuff. Push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and run, and it was simple, but like you said, as time went on, like you said, you learned something from someone, and I learned something from someone. But I remember one of the guys came back from the GPs, and he goes, the good guys stand for at least the first 2 laps. And I was like, all right, yeah, they're doing it, we're going to do it. Yeah. So we did. It was the same thing. And to your point, it enabled you to kind of warm up, get everything firing, get your balance,
get your bike up to temp. I mean,
and then ease into it before you did something stupid as well.
Yeah, because again, moto guys, we have a tendency to just, I've done this jump before.
I know this track. You come in like, oh man, I'm a little sore.
Or they change the track on you, or there's a mud hole. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. So when you get back in, while you're topping off, your mechanic's topping off with fuel, and you can do some dynamic stretching. Doesn't take a whole lot.
Yeah. So in this sport, despite all of our efforts, people do get hurt. What are your recommendations for like acute injury management, post-doctor visit? And then how important is physical therapy in that equation?
Huge. It's huge, especially for the longevity of your career. I mean, I think we can all agree that if you look at some of the successful athletes in the sport, the ones that had the least injuries tend to be the most successful. Mm-hmm. And the riders that start off at an early age, with a femur fracture, it just starts this cascade of events.
And this and that.
We have this saying in rehab. It's like the most common cause of an injury is a previous injury.
Yeah,
one that you didn't fully rehab from. And I mean, I'm sure both of you are guilty of this, but
cutting your rehab short.
But it's
in the pro side of things, pro racing side of things, it's I got to get back to racing.
Yes.
I got to go out and earn my living. On the recreational side of things, the people mostly watching the show, it's I don't need to do that, or whatever it is, whatever their reasoning is. But there's a lot of it that gets shortchanged.
So I tell this to some of the younger parents of the riders that are coming up, from 5 years old all the way up before they get to the pros. And Kehoe had told me this one time. He's like, look, there's a large pool of athletes that we can pick from. Okay, and we have our eyes on many of them as they're coming up through their amateur career. What ends up happening is some of these kids get hurt and they feel like they're going to lose a ride, so they keep riding. And then when they get up to the point where they're trying to pick and select, some of those kids don't make it there. They're off. Their pace is down. They're not having the results.
They're riding at 80%.
Yeah, and I tell kids, I'm like, if the right people are telling you that you have what it takes, the team managers, the people that are picking, if they tell you they see something in you, then you've got it. Don't ruin it.
Yeah.
Okay. And you maybe 1 or 2 years, let's say you have an ACL injury or something where it sets you back. But if you rehab 100% from that, you still have it. And then go back and fight a little bit more. But the chances of you still having it and being competitive is going to be there. Where if you say, no, I'm going to just keep racing.
I'm going to ride through it.
Yeah, I'm going to ride through it. And then all of a sudden it gets to the point where you're picking and now you're not getting picked.
Yeah.
And there's so many kids that are out there that have that opportunity, but so many that lose it because they're not smart, with this stuff.
Well, another thing that I experienced, which was, you talk about the rehab and after an injury, and there again, doctors try to tell you how important it is, but like you said, racer mentality, you're blowing past what he's saying, and you're like, yeah, I'll do that, and then get back on the bike. But I think where, for me, I noticed a difference was if you had someone that, let's just say someone like yourself that had been around the sport, that had experience doing rehab, or as opposed to someone that treated you like someone that had a desk job. I've gone to rehab and they're like, all right, shoulders, okay, lift your arm up 10 times. Good job. You're great. Yeah. And I'm like, screw this. I'm not coming back. But then someone else, maybe like yourself, or I've had a couple good therapists over the years, and it's like they know who you are, they know what you're trying to get at, and they push you to a point that they know that they're pushing you without going too far. Then to me, it kept me engaged. It kept me wanting to come back because I felt improvement. So I think motocrossers are also wired a little bit differently. If someone treats you like an average citizen, it's almost like a boring waste of time.
It's an insult.
Yeah, it kind of is. Well, so I think there's also something to be said about what the athlete feels if he's benefiting from.
So the point of that is find a good physical therapist. And doesn't mean all of them are good.
And let me add to that, because this comes up, and it actually came up not too long ago with a parent that was calling me about their kid and trying to get him some care and stuff. And one of the first things I asked him is, what kind of insurance you got? Oh, I got Medicaid, or I'm on HMO. And I said, well, you're pretty much screwed.
Yeah.
I mean, you for those that maybe don't understand, you have PPOs, HMOs, and Medicaid. PPO is basically, it's more expensive, and you have the ability to kind of see whoever you want, and your options are much more.
If you're a racer, I would always say you've got to have a PPO. In my opinion, I would advise it to any parent, any rider, anyone, because unfortunately, you're going to use it.
So here's like I said, this happened a couple weeks ago. It was a BMX kid, and broke his collarbone, and they were trying to decide what they wanted to do. And the kid showed me the X-ray. I'm like, hey, I'm not a doctor, but that needs to have surgery. If all the X-rays that I've seen with the doctors that I've seen X-rays with, they would look at this and they go, yeah, that needs to be plated. So this kid, he had an HMO. He goes to his doctor and he's like, no, we don't plate those. Just let it go. And I'm thinking, dude, you're not gonna. It's not gonna be good. And so they reached out to another sports doctor, and they went to this guy, and he's like, no, I wouldn't plate that. So I sent the X-ray to a couple of our guys that we work with in the industry, and all of them said, plate it. So it's like, but again, this was a product of his insurance, and they're not, I mean, why are they going to do surgery on that? I mean, he's going to be fine. It's going to heal. But here's a kid that's an Olympic hopeful. Okay. He has that type of path set for him. He can be there. And now they're going to shortchange that a little bit because it may take a lot longer to heal. It may not heal totally 100%. But I mean, as far as the way your anatomy is, he's going to be able to like brush his teeth. But now, if you take away, I mean, we know, like if you take away 2% of your ability at the highest level, that's a big, so insurance, get the best, that you can. If it means getting a Sprinter van instead of a, fifth wheel or something like that, but insurance should be one of your top priorities and getting that. And then now you have avenues open to you. So then you can find a therapist that's going to be able to take their time with you.
understand what you're trying to accomplish.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I had that too with breaking my collarbone, where it was Doc Ryman at the time, and it was, if you were just an average Joe that wasn't really in athletics, I'd say it'll heal. It might have a slight kink, but you'll be fine. But he goes, knowing what you do and that, and he goes, I wouldn't want to throw your body or your anatomy off or anything. He goes, so for you, I would plate it.
Yeah.
And it was one of those where I had the decision. It's like, I would do that for an average Joe, and I would do that for you. And I was like, well, get it plated,
Mm-hmm.
It's not a huge surgery. And I took the initiative to say, I'd rather feel like everything is as straight as possible because I already feel twisted. So, yeah, it's just also comes back to make sure you get more than one opinion sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've heard people say, no, doctor was adamant on this, and then turns out he was completely wrong.
And good, like, I'm not saying a good doctor, but a humble doctor, humble physician, and someone who's confident in their services, they'll say, yeah, go ahead. Go, or, you know what?
Yeah,
and you might say, I'm going to go to, or they may ask you who you going to. Oh, I know that guy. He's a really good guy. He's a solid dude. Yeah, I would go to him. Get a second opinion. I mean,
well, here's another great example. I want to say it was Brayton, who just after that crash he had at Daytona. Was it Daytona?
Yep. Well, he got plowed.
He didn't crash. He got plowed. But he went to the ER there, and they x-rayed it. No, you look good. I'm just banged up and bruised. And he posted that. And he went home, saw his specialist because he was still really sore like a week later. And they go, oh, yeah, you got fractures here, fractures there. Like he was broken up in several spots.
yeah.
Maybe rib. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look at his post. But it was his hand and something else, right?
His teammate plowed him.
Freezy.
Yeah.
Well, they're not teammates technically, so
they're on Hondas.
doesn't matter.
Anyway.
He's like, not my problem.
My point is,
Yes.
ERs, particularly ERs, if you just go to a hospital emergency room, they'll miss stuff a lot.
Triage only. That's their job there.
Yeah. Well, you got a
so
doctor, you got an ortho who's been up for almost 24 hours and stuff, and he's like, yeah, it looks,
I don't know. Let me get another copy. I can't see what's going on.
Their job in the emergency room is just to triage you.
Yeah.
Make sure you're not dying.
Yeah, it's we'll get to Bodnar later on that, but it's handle gross issues, right? Not dialing on those really tight things. So second opinion is always important. PowerDot is a big tool that we promote here. What are your thoughts on something like that and that technology in general?
It has a place. When it first came out, obviously I'm like, all right, gimmicky, let me take a look at this. And I got one. And I started looking at it, and I was like, all right, it has a place for sure. And my suggestion to the riders has always been, get with someone like that understands the mechanics. Because you have settings, right? But within the literature, you can read, the settings and the actual parameters and stuff. I'm like, all right, you know what? This setting will work for what you need and stuff. So, like from a rehab standpoint,
that includes riders having to read. That's where you lost them right there.
So, I have actually a lot of riders in the motor industry. They have it. They have that, and so they'll call me up. Hey, how do I use this thing for this situation, or can I? And I was like, yeah, run this setting, and it'll help you for what you need.
Yeah.
So it definitely has a place. And the cool thing about it is that it's relatively inexpensive. And like I said, if you get it with the right person and they set you up with what you need, you have access to that all day. Whether if you can go to the clinic, but again, too, and I need to add this from a healthcare point of view is that shouldn't supplement going to see the right person.
You mean replace?
Or
it should supplement.
Yeah, exactly. Shouldn't replace going to see a person. So a lot of people say, oh, well, Joey's got me on this PowerDot thing. I'm just going to use it, or whatever it might be. Not just that, but and they end up having a fracture. I'm like, well, you should have went.
It's not going to.
It's not going to fix your fracture.
Yeah. So
my femur's broken, but I think I'm going to just PowerDot it. I should be fine.
Yeah. Or other people are like, you got to work on your abs. I'll just put a machine on and watch TV. I don't have rock hard abs.
So do the right things. Get checked out if it's something significant. And once you clear all the main things, then it absolutely serves a great purpose for recovery, right? For injury, stuff like that. So definitely a staple you have to have in your program.
As a guy with really bad knees, I've injured my back multiple times, my shoulders. I use this thing, and the difference for me is huge. So I'm a big fan of it, and we've had a lot of people buy them from this show and say, "Dude, this thing has really helped me a lot." So thank you. So anyway, common injuries you see in moto from all your years on the Astros rig and everything else. What are the top 3 most common things you see?
Wrists, knees, ankles.
Joints, huh?
Joints, yeah. And it's it's really crazy. It's like It's kind of like the virus. I mean, if we start at A1 with like 2 wrists, then the rest of the season are all wrists. If it's an ankle, then it seems like it's ankle. It's an ankle year.
Jeez.
It's like really weird. I don't know how. It's just kind of.
And so
like that.
I wonder, like as you mentioned earlier, the most common cause of injury is prior injury.
Yes.
How many of those are chronic? Like, oh yeah, I hurt this 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. You're favoring an ankle, and you're gonna ride, the way you need to ride, and so it opens a door for you to have another injury.
And so that goes back to good injury management and injury therapy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you, something you really did when we worked together, even since then when I've come and seen you for issues I've had, is you're really good at doing deficiency assessments. Like we'll do, I don't know, broad jumps or, like whatever. And you go, okay, your glutes aren't firing and here's why. And this is what's going on because of that. And you really break it down, which is something that I guess a good physical therapist would do that. But I think a lot of people don't have that done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was one of the first things that I would do with any athlete that I worked with is like, hey, let's see how you move. Okay. And you start screening them out and, you say, hey, you can't balance on your right leg. Well, I had ACL surgery there. Okay. Well, you should be able to do this. Okay.
Yeah.
Is this because your injury you had scar tissue or whatever, your anatomy's changed. So we're not getting through this or everything's good. You're weak. So we need to balance this out and then we'll work on that. And your body's connected.
And that's a big part of what you do, right? Is balancing out and correcting deficiencies.
Yes, absolutely.
And that should be the job of a good athletic trainer or
anybody that you work with. Yeah, because whatever's happening at your ankle will have. It sounds crazy, but it'll have an effect on what's going on at your wrist. If it's significant enough that it starts working its way up, absolutely, and that could have a big impact on your right.
Well, I've hurt my right knee, and all of a sudden now my left hip
is sore
because I'm limping, or and I mean it does it finds its way through your whole body.
And the one thing that that kind of saves moto athletes is that you are kind of locked to the bike. Your feet are on the pegs, where if you're like a soccer player, you have to be dynamic one foot to the other and you're balancing and but still you need to have that mobility and that balance.
Well, and another great way to look, I look at the bottom of my boots. My left boot is always more worn than my right.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's obviously favoring it and putting more weight on my left peg.
Well, if you take most riders and you do even simple things like stand on one leg and do a squat.
Yes.
Just what you said. Most guys are like, well, I'm better with my left because I blew my right knee out. And I've had to learn this just through trial and error, which is, well, work on getting that as stable as the other side, because if you're off, you're always going to be off with everything. You're going to compensate one way or another.
So one of the things that big thing, most moto guys are probably guilty of this, corners. Like if it's a deep rut, you got to get your leg up right by the handlebar. But that's a hamstring mobility issue, right?
So how many people can?
So if you can't lay on your back and get your leg up to 90 degrees, that's
you're not going to be able to do that. Yeah.
So when you go into a corner and you got to get your leg up, this is what I tell them. I go, something's got to give. So if you have to get your leg up there, then you're going to have to round your back out, and your head's going to go forward of the bars. You're changing your body position. Okay, so I remember Stuart was doing this a while back ago, and someone's like, "Hey, we should maybe do turns like that." He was actually bringing his knee up. So where his foot was more towards the bar, and they're like, "Oh, that's a new Stewart technique." I'm like, "Well, it probably is. He has tight hamstrings, so he's having to do that on purpose. It's not like that's the best way to do it."
Yeah.
So that's just an example of how everything's connected, and it can have an effect in how you ride.
Absolutely,
that's interesting.
Well, I think riders also have. I don't know how you are, but most riders either prefer like going left or going right, and a lot of times it's based off they were injured on one side and they're more tentative, but on the other side they have all the confidence in the world to throw it in.
I hate right-hand turns because I don't want to put my foot out there.
See, I'm the other way around. I prefer right-hand turns.
Do you have something injured on the left?
I have injuries on both sides. Yeah, pretty much.
So a lot of times the Alpine Stars crew takes a lot of heat for the way they handle incidents on the track, and this comes from people who have zero medical training. So talk a little bit about the unique setting of that. We mentioned it a little bit at the top of the show, but also like when I came and helped with that a couple of times, I was pretty fresh out of medic school. And so I was going, okay, what are the protocols for this? What's this? Because it's in a county, I'm obviously accredited in San Bernardino County, and these are the protocols. You don't operate outside these parameters, period. But with the medic unit, because it's interstate, it's a little different. You're working under the doc's license, right? So protocols are more recommendations. They're not these cemented,
Well, that applies to when we go from like county to county or even state to state. One of the first things that we do in our riders meeting is we bring in the medical staff that's on site, their paramedic crew. And Dr. Bodner's like, look, you guys follow protocols. And what we want to do is we'll see the patient. And if we have to hand them off to you, then you take over. It's that way we avoid any of that issue. But as far as like what happens,
like transporting units, they're going to follow their protocols to the letter.
And so that's one of the reasons why too is we don't do certain drugs on the truck. If we're going to do something like that, if we're going to go to that level, then we just hand it off to the paramedic because they may not have certain drugs on their truck. And if you do that, then you're like, well, you're host. You can't transport the patient, or it just makes it a big mess.
You can't take narcotics across state lines like that. So the only pain meds that the truck has, if I'm correct, is Toradol.
Yeah,
and ibuprofen, maybe, or something.
I mean, we used to have the goods, but then we had an issue like that coming through the border one time, and our truck driver he got sent to jail.
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh. Well, we had a lockbox. It was two
double locked. Yeah.
Double locked. Different people had the different keys, so it was safe, and it was hidden. But when they were coming through the border, they were checking everything, and it's like, "What's this box for?" And the truck driver was like, "I don't know." They're like, "What do you mean you don't know?"
Was it the Canadian border?
Yeah.
Well, U.S. border coming through.
Yeah, and so they said, "We need to open it." I was like, "Well, I don't have the key." And then, well, no, you need to open it. So that became a big mess. The next thing you know, the truck driver was calling Tom Carson, crying, "I'm arrested. Come and get me."
Oh my god!
So after that situation, it's like, we're done with this. We don't need that. So.
Yeah, and you've got the transporting agencies there. Yes. They have all the narcotics that we need. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we do have some protocols within, the program. And this came to, a number of years ago. I remember Bodnar was saying, we've got too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Like we'd go to the rider, and you'd have 4 docs show up. I mean, how many sports do you have 4 doctors showing up to see?
Yeah.
And they're all kind of. There has to be some person in charge. And you know this. I mean, when you go on a call, one person's in charge and he's kind of guiding everybody else.
The first medic on scene, whether that's the ambulance company or us, is the medical authority on that scene, period.
And so, so we worked that out. Now, they have a protocol for how we're going to handle that and stuff. And so we do have some.
But like, for example, I remember working there and talking to Dr. Bodnar a little bit about it. And he'd say, a lot of times when a guy gets knocked out, obviously, our protocol would be you got to keep them down, don't let them get up. But if you try to hold them down, sometimes when they come to, they're going to be so disoriented and full of adrenaline, they're going to sit up anyway.
Yes.
And he goes, if you try to hold them down, you could do more damage than if you just let them sit up.
Yes. Yeah.
So you kind of flex a little bit with that stuff,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Where, I don't think we'd be so flexible. I'm not going to let a guy get up on scene of a TC if he's knocked unconscious, right? So,
well, I mean, it kind of depends. I mean, it's like, how bad's the guy fighting you, or however, So you have to be there in the moment to make that decision and make the best one.
But motocross guys are different anyway, right? I mean,
it's a different breed, as we mentality. Said. Yeah, and like I said, they're literally, if you're out there riding, you're charged with adrenaline. So when you come to, that adrenaline doesn't just go away; it's still coursing through. I'm told
rodeo guys are the same. Like those guys are the same.
Oh, I would imagine
they just like. They want up, and they're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Grab my arm. I'm taking it with me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you guys can tell me if this is true, but I've been told this from moto guys. That, I don't know, maybe it was Ivan. He said, if you can get up as soon as you hit the deck, you'll beat the pain. Like, you won't be injured if you can beat it. So they had this mentality, like, the faster you get up, the less chance you are to get injured. I'm like, I don't know if that works, but if that's your mentality.
that defies logic, I think, a little bit.
But that was just how they were processing it. As soon as they hit it, I'm getting up. I'm going to outrun the injury.
I always felt that if you could get up. Like, don't pull the piss out of it. My dad would always say, if you lay there, you're not doing anyone any favors.
Yeah. Well, and you risk getting injured. Someone running you turn something small like a little sprained ankle to a broken arm. I mean, because you didn't get out of the way.
No, I think maybe what Ivan was alluding to is if nothing's broken, but you took a slam, get up and walk it off quick.
We were getting a laugh at it. It was just kind of funny. It's like, just get up. You can outrun the injury. I'm like, okay, sure.
What are the most difficult situations to deal with down on the floor, working in that scenario? For you?
I think it was when you've been in it long enough, and unlike other sports, like in other sports, they really try to put up this the athletic trainers and the medical staff are to be separated from the athletes. Like there's no you don't hang out, you don't do that. There's a big, there's a gap there, and they do that for a reason. But in moto, it's not like that. So you get to know these people's families, you hang out with them, you're kind of on the same level with them. So when you have an injury on the track, all that is getting processed. You're just like, man, this kid's got a mom, he's got a dad, he's got a wife, got kids and stuff. And so
that's got to be a benefit too, though, when you know so much about the athlete. I mean, half the time you're probably like, I remember he injured his knee 6 months ago. Yes. He's got a broken collarbone.
Yep.
Well,
Absolutely.
that is what I think that the unit lost not having you there is that continuity of care. Right?
Yeah.
You knew all these guys, and on the one hand, that's great in that sense. But I feel like that would make it harder. Maybe you were used to it from the military because you're working on guys you knew. But like for me, that makes my job way harder. I like not knowing them.
Yeah.
Even a couple of the races I went to when I knew the guys, I didn't like it. It changed the dynamic. Yeah. And then I've had an issue, like I had to run a CPR on someone I knew, and it spun me out.
Yeah,
it's a completely different animal.
It can be. I mean, it for sure can do that. And, you can work through it. There's ways to do it. But I think getting on site, for a rider that's down, especially say a rider that's either knocked out or maybe it's a pretty serious injury, like Weimer that one year when he got plowed in that rhythm section, and you just know going into that situation like it's not going to be good, and and the other thing too is like where these guys are in their career, where they are in the season, this sounds crazy, but sometimes you even know like this is a contract year and all this stuff's going on and all that plays in your mind. I'm like, dude, you're effed. Going to him, and you're trying to. I mean,
that would be interesting, right? Dude, you're totally screwed.
Well, no, because what's
your career just went out the window,
and that makes it tough because and then the other thing too, it also plays in your return to play decision as well. So you got to be able to take that out sometimes too. And this happened between you and me that year when you broke your triple clamps and you were coughing up just a little blood, and you asked me like, hey, what do I do? I'm like, well, I think if it were Carmichael, we'd go back out there and, we have medical care. Let's, if you drop a lung here, we'll be fine. But the other part of me is like, the right thing to do is go to the hospital and get checked out. So I'm in a tough spot and you're asking me and I'm like, I don't want to be that guy right now. Yeah. So I just said, go to the hospital, and then you end up going and it's no big deal. Yeah. Remember that? And I'm like, fuck, now I'm, I have to live with that too.
But at the same time, it comes down to you're trying to make the best decision without having all the facts in front of you. Yeah. That's the other part. But I remember once or twice just thinking, crash, supercross, motocross, whatever, get knocked out, or even just a concussion. And I know that when I get knocked out and concussed and I don't know where I am, I'll have a tendency to maybe cry or just like have this, I don't know where I am, like this sad moment. But when you see a familiar face, whether it was you or Doc or someone, you relate because you don't know your name, you don't know where you're at, but you see that face and you know that face and you just want to talk to him like, am I going to be I used to have that sometimes. I'm like, well, I don't know. And they're like, it's okay, GL, we're going to be fine. We're going here. Like, okay, wait, what happened?
Over and over.
Yeah.
But
where am I?
But you always had a sense of, I know that person. Like, and it's funny on the outside, but when you've been in that position where you're totally almost freaked out because you don't remember anything and you should know, and it's frustrating. Familiar faces around you can mean so much at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like again, me being at the practice tracks, me being in it for so long. I don't know how they're doing it now. How the athletic trainers, the other staff, but I've had moms come to me and say, "Well, I know you. Like we've had dinner. I know where your heart's at. I know you have my son's best interest at hand. So when he goes down on the track, I'm okay." Where before it's like, I got to be down there. I got to be there for him. I don't know what these guys are going to do.
Sure.
So on and so forth.
Or parents almost feel like they need to mediate. No. Yeah. I mean, I remember parents, no, don't cut his boot off. They're like $600. I'm like, no. So, is it broken? No, I don't think so, Mom. Okay, good.
Speaking of concussions, talk about how are we addressing that enough in this sport? I know you were in charge of the concussion program for a couple of years.
Myself, Dr. Ryman, and at the time when we put this together, it was ahead of every other sport. I mean, I would say that with with all the confidence in the world, because we went and we consulted with other teams that were doing testing, and then we took like the best parts of each of those and then brought it into our program, and we had a really, really solid program for its time. I mean, it's now. When I left, it was one of the things that I was fighting for was trying to advance that, trying to make it better, because now other entities caught up. And so we need to move forward. And how can we make this better? And I don't know where it's at. I know when I left, I mean, that was one of the reasons why I ended up, getting let go. And Dr. Ryman was kind of left with the whole thing, and he was, working on some stuff. But I don't think it's where. I mean, if you look at the program now, I think it's mediocre, and it does its job. But I think it could be way better. And the avenue's there. I mean, it's just it's like. Funding is obviously the issue, but if you word it the right way and you get the right people behind you, and the industry is always behind it. If it's better for the athletes and it means that it's going to keep them on the track and keep their health and whatnot down the road, why not do it? But again, it takes some funding, and I don't know where that's at, but I know it's definitely possible. Like, for example, when we first did it, one of the difficulties we had was everyone was scattered around the country and around the world, and they needed to get this testing done. So I went to an organization that works with colleges to do online testing, like they have to do a final or something, and they worked with us, and we were able to do this, through video. And at the time, no one was doing that, and even the company that did the concussion testing, they kind of were like, "Don't do that. You need to have a healthcare professional on there." So I made it so that the person taking the test was being viewed by another person, like they were watching you through the camera. And now when you look at it, that company now offers that program. Like now it's okay to do that. So it's like, you see, we were way
guys kind of broke ground with it.
Well, or whether they looked at ours or whatnot, but now they're doing that, as part of the deal. And I'm like, okay, so now that's normal. Where could we be, moving forward? And our sport actually allows us to do that because we're not regimented. Like the NFL, you can't do something unless everybody's in agreement for it. And same with other, Major League Baseball and stuff.
It's almost like because it's a union in a sense.
To some extent, yeah. And it takes a little bit longer to get stuff done. But our sport, we can do that. And a lot of times, it's just a matter of talking to the right people and getting the funding. So it's whether they want to push that or not.
And funding is always seems to be the stumbling block because nobody wants to shoulder it. But
so they will. Like, I mean, I remember talking to the teams and stuff. They're like, yeah, just let us know how we can do it. Just as long as we're all involved in it, and how we can.
When you say it needs funding, are we talking potentially an addition of 100,000 to a program per year, or is it more? I mean,
no. I mean, I think it was like when we first started this, we went to the teams and we said, hey, we need $56,000. And they said
total.
And
you're having the teams pay for this?
So when Dr. Ryman and I first did this, we put it together, and then
this seems like a promoter responsibility, in my opinion.
So this is out now. Like Dr. Ryman and I got together, and we put out this program, and we're like, hey, let's just test it out. And then MX Sports came and said, hey, we're going to make it mandatory. Oh, okay. And they said we were going to do it. So we kind of had to figure out what it was going to cost. So we came up with the numbers like $58,000. That was for the licensing, to cover Dr. Ryman and I's, funding to do it, time and effort and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, no, not going to happen. And I was like, okay, then we're done. And then, they said, hey, we need, they're already committed. We have to make this work. So, Dr. Ryman and I, we made it work. Okay. I mean, we went from that amount of money to, I think they're paying us, it was like $300 a month, to facilitate that. So we made it work. And then when you're asking how much it's going to cost, so here we are, X amount of years later, and I'm saying, hey, we got to get this number now. I mean, we got to at least do this to make this, work. And they're like, it's not going to happen. So I was like, okay. But if you really, going back to your point, if we wanted to advance, it would, I mean, you could probably still do it for that amount. A little bit more would be helpful, to be able to get some maybe full-time or even get some additional testing or get maybe some people to come in that could help us out with other things. Like we're looking at maybe doing some research with our guys, getting maybe some moto guys that are maybe up in age, getting in to do some kind of like testing to see how they're doing. Because that's one of our fears is the older guys, the generation before, your generation that are now into their 50s and stuff, and some approaching their 60s, what's their health, from all these concussions that they had prior to, we having this program, get them, some help if needed.
Yeah.
So,
is there anything in your opinion that track owners, race organizers could do to improve rider safety, pro or amateur level?
I thought what Trey was doing, on the professional side of things, he had a great concept, and I think that would have been a big start. I think the riders were in favor of it, and for whatever reason, he said no. I don't know where the funding was coming from, but he's like, I don't want this entity influencing my decision. I'd rather just be able to do this. And for whatever reason, it just really didn't happen, because they do have a safety person at the pro level, but they're in charge of like the safety of track workers, and just everything
the
in general.
well-being for everyone.
Everything, not the track itself. So I think what Trey was doing was a good idea, in taking that and maybe making it a little better, and actually having a group of people that can discuss how to keep it safe, how to keep it entertaining. How, the riders have an input, the promoter, all that kind of stuff.
And I think that applies to the track, but also to equipment riders are wearing or not wearing.
Yes.
Like I'm a big believer we should at least be having front chest protectors with plastic in them be mandatory.
Yeah.
I think it's insane that we're not requiring that.
And to do that, like, so then going like onto the concussion thing and getting the funding, if you had, like, say Trey's program was there and it was separate from, the promoter and then the riders, and you had a bit of cash, you can say, look, let's do some testing. Let's have, a company design a chest protector and let's go test it. And I know, like, in France, there's a company that does, the RXR or something like that. They do some testing and stuff, but all right, let's see if that truly does what it's intended to do. And you can do that within our sport. It's just, again, it takes people to do it. And that would be awesome. Then you can say, look, it's mandatory because it is going to help you.
Proven, yeah.
Well, I mean, as well as I do, the torso and head are the two most important parts of your body you need to protect.
Yeah.
Plastic versus a thin piece of polyester.
Yeah.
I mean, common sense a little bit.
Well, for most guys, they don't wear anything. They're
wearing like maybe the foam for roost guard, but
most guys don't wear anything.
Yeah.
Maybe outdoors for roost, but I'm saying like Supercross.
Yeah.
But to me,
Well,
and get riders, get like old riders, previous, riders to do some testing. Go, hey, we have different types of.
Oh, we got one right here, Pink. We got an old rider right here.
Hey, look, it fits well. I mean, maybe it's not the best as not having anything, but I could ride with this.
No, there's good enough products out there.
Yeah.
They're not the bulky old chest protectors of the past that didn't move. There's good products out there. There's no reason for it to not happen.
Well, also, I think we're on the verge of basically having chest protectors with airbags that will, when a guy gets thrown, a little bit like MotoGP and other sports that have it. So I think that's going to eventually find its way into our sport. Yeah,
potentially. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming in, man. It's good stuff. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to be back with Doc Bodnar, but Eddie, I appreciate you coming.
I appreciate you guys.
We've been long-time friends, and I sure appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right.
We'll do the modern day handshake.
Yeah, we'll just do this. No COVID-19 here. All right. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
At Nihilo Concepts, we have a passion for innovation and for motocross. Our mission is to develop parts that will improve the durability, functionality, and the appearance of your motorcycle. We're proud to say that everything from Nihilo is made in the USA in our state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Stuart, Florida. Whether you race every weekend or you just ride for fun, Nihilo offers high-quality, innovative parts that you just won't find anywhere else. Nihilo offers custom engraved engine covers, one-piece titanium foot pegs, brake tips, internal engine components, specialty tools, frame grip tape, carbon fiber components, and so much more. Check out our website, NihiloConcepts.com, and see for yourself why teams like Red Bull KTM, Rockstar Husqvarna, Troy Lee Designs, and some of the fastest riders in the world choose Nihilo Concepts. NihiloConcepts.com.
see the sunrise. I wake up in the morning feeling so nice. I burn a couple bowls of the alright. I look out to the world and it's all mine. Yeah, it's all mine. I see palm trees and joints, kids smoke palm trees like ointment. My weed breath is fresh cause I keep my appointments. Now I can finally see, like I smoked some DMT. What you think we should sound like? What you think we do at night? Cause we the best of this shit. We made a mess of this shit. We wrecked the rest of all the Wester with the recklessness. If you's a bitch, you might get snatched up like some necklaces. This where the rest of us live. You say we feel like the West Coast. I say we sound like the past. You say we feel like the West Coast.
Welcome back to the Whiskey Throttle Show. That's your Troiley Designs timeout. Go over to troileydesigns.com. Check out their full line of mountain bike, motocross, skier, the paint department. They've got a brand new GP helmet out that is cutting edge, incredible pricing, and still retaining all the safety features of the high-end SE helmets. So get over and check those guys out. We're back now with Dr. John Bodnar. He's a trauma ER physician from the San Diego area. This guy has basically put together the Asterisk or Alpine Stars medical unit now.
Started as one, became another.
Yeah.
So we'll get into all that. And Doc, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great. Getting out here, getting the new TLD place. I hadn't seen this before, so.
Yeah. Well, this is the saloon, we call it. So welcome.
You didn't get put off by driving towards Corona?
No.
That seems to put everyone off these days. Even the beer sales are just in the toilet.
Well, from San Diego, it's easy to Temecula. You got to make that last turn and go another 30 minutes, so it's fine, though.
Well, we sure appreciate you coming up.
Glad to do it.
We're trying to do, this show is kind of safety focused, trying to just pass along some good information on, Eddie focused on injury prevention, injury management, injury recovery. And so we kind of want to get into more of the some of the other things with you in terms of pro racing and amateur racing. But start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the motocross industry. How'd you get involved?
Yeah, that's a long one. Actually, I was a flagger back in the Ricky Johnson and David Bailey battles in San Diego Stadium. I was one of those guys. I even got on TV once, just a side shot out of nowhere, big face on the head. Hey, I'm on TV. It was kind of cool. But I just one of those guys with the yellow flags out there, and I used to race desert and enduros out in Southern California. So it was a great thing to do and get out there. But when I went to med school after that, it was like, hey, noticed that they didn't have anybody to really take care of the riders, just the medics. Obviously, you being a medic, do a great job.
Steady, all right, okay.
Throw you under the bus. But it's one of those things. When we got to the races, you saw that here's guys making good money. They're professional. They work really hard, and then they just disappeared in an ambulance, and nobody knows where they went. And the follow up was nothing. It's whatever they could arrange. So when I got out of med school, I just my residency was right there at UC Irvine, right next to Anaheim Stadium. Mm-hmm. So I went over to Mickey Thompson, and I'd kind of known some people just from being there. And said, oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah, I said, hey, I'll help out. So basically, for about 8 years, I volunteered and did all the West Coast, in many races I could get myself to, and just volunteered.
What time frame was that?
That was 92 when I got out of med school. Okay. So 92, and I was during the early 80s, mid 80s when I was flagging.
Okay.
And then I got out in 92 and went till like 95 through the residency, and then after that I was back in San Diego. So that early 92 to almost to 2000, when we first started getting the full sponsorship, I was just running around with the bag, helping out and trying to work with the medics. So at least at the scenes you could say, hey, this is what we want you to do, and best way to get them off the track, things like that. And then at the same time, when they did get done, we could check with them, or could see them at the hospital, that type of stuff. So luckily we were sort of the whole time working with the guys there, saying, hey, I'd like to do this for all the races, but I wasn't very entrepreneurial. It's like I guess you learn as you go, so to speak.
Sure. Yeah,
and so after a while they came up and said, hey, we got a sponsor that wants to have you go to all the races, and that was Asterisk. And so started going from that, and I think one of the AMA guys ran over my leg on one of our dirt riding rides out in my mountains, and we had to use a mule to get around. So luckily we got another mule from Kawasaki, hooked us up, and from then on it just got built, and they decided we finally got a rig, and it just went from there. So after a while it got easier, because in some ways, because you kind of realized how to move and get. I didn't want to go through the industry necessarily. I didn't know who was going to sponsor us. I was thinking Johnson & Johnson or something like that. Medical, but I didn't know what to do. So luckily, it just cruised into that. And now with the Alpine Star, it's been awesome. So it's stepped up all the way. So, and as you know, you worked with this Ping, one of our medics for a few races, and it's a good thing to get out there and organize everybody, because it's we want to make sure that everything's done right. Get them when they do get hurt. And I'm sure Eddie talked a lot about recovery and guys getting back too soon, and that was really common. You see guys get hurt, and they going to race to get better and get race to get into shape, and then they get hurt again a week or two later, and then they're out for 6 weeks, and then so that helps a lot. So with all that and being able to keep an eye on them when they were hurt, and get them, like with Dr. Ryman, Dr. Alexander came on board, and I knew Ryman because he was working on Chad Reed a lot, and he said, "Hey, my guy's here," and he would tell me that he's his doctor. So it worked out well that we got them to help out and now we're doing it all, the whole series, a whole year.
Well, as a guy, my first Supercross was in '93, so it was probably you were running around with a bag.
Oh yeah,
picking me up when I
remember
bust
when you
myself.
broke your frame and all that.
Yeah. So having seen the transition from just a couple of ambulances with guys who knew nothing about dirt bike racing to what it is now, night and day. So much better for the riders. And I know people can be very critical of you guys at times, and we mentioned that even with Eddie, and it's like, look, even if you don't understand or know what's going on, just trust that it's way better than it would be with just a couple of AMR medics that don't know anything about dirt bike racing down there.
And that's key too. I think there's something, doesn't mean they're not a good medic, but those people are more used to someone fell down the stairs or just a more, what I'd say, relaxed injury, isolated. Motocross, it's intense, it's fast, there's a lot of moving things, and a lot of times when a guy goes down, it's not just a wrist, it can be shoulder, abdomen, neck, back.
Those guys will see multi-system trauma out in the field as well, but it's the environment. You're asking them to walk across a track and understand which direction it's going, and you know what I mean, know what's safe and what's not safe.
And you don't have all the time in the world. You feel the pressure when there's a race happening behind you to get yourself and the injured athlete out of harm's way.
It's when you're even at a car wreck, they get some pretty major traumas at times, but everything shuts down. The cops get there, and
the roads are shut down.
Everything's under control, so to speak. But with us, it is always really kind of a panic situation, and you want to go, and you want the rider off quickly but safely and all that. So even the maneuvers, it may not look to some people we're doing it safely, but it is all still protocols.
Absolutely. So, and you still ride quite a bit. I don't know if people know that, but I saw you at Kauai not too long ago.
Yeah. I still get out when I can. Unfortunately, with the COVID-19 is making a big cut on everybody, but I think I have some weekends off now. Hopefully get out if they keep the tracks open. But I think that helps a little bit. You just kind of, obviously I'm not going like fast as I was before, and never was that fast before probably, but it's just, you understand, it's sure. Even at work, they'll go, "Hey, we got a guy in here, he's hurt his arm in a dirt bike accident, so at the hospital, I'll go see him," because I know I'm not going to give him much garbage about.
You walk up, case of triple?
How'd you do? Okay, I gotcha. But
how do you handle that? Like every time one of us goes to the emergency room, they're always like, "You shouldn't be riding those dirt bikes." So if you get hurt, what happens? The doctor yell at you?
Well, well, once you know a doc too, then they kind of just, you get that head shake. Like they know that they're not going to convince me one way or another by then.
Sure.
So I do get some grief on it. It's worse when you can't go to work. So if you can't go to work, I broke my arm a couple years ago. It was a little bad, and everybody's kind of got a feeling. But again, ER docs are a pretty good bunch. It's just like medics too. They all help each other out. So they'll pull together to work my shifts for me.
You're all real people. So the fact is that they get hurt in some other manner. It's not like something doesn't happen to another ER doctor.
Yeah, and we've had a few guys mountain bike or just simple things, and they can't work for 3 or 4 weeks. So we all help out. But it's nice to be able to take care of somebody, and you walk in there and you don't get the, "Hey, what are you doing riding that dumb dirt bike?" and get a real job and that kind of stuff. So it helps.
So what made you want to be focus on trauma? Because when you went to medic school, you could have specialized in any number of things. What drew you to that?
I'm not a trauma surgeon, so actually I was talking to someone the other day. I'm an ER doctor that does trauma, and then there's trauma doctors who work, obviously in the ER, but they're really just trauma surgeons. So I'd rather see an ER doctor who works trauma. We're nicer guys for one. Most surgeons. I hope there's no surgeons watching, but they're an interesting bunch. But years ago, I just decided I thought I was going to be an engineer, because I'm real tinkering. Even on my bikes, I'm always messing messing with something. I can't leave everything stock or whatever.
Okay.
But and then just something clicked. And I thought, maybe I could be a doctor. It's engineering in a sense.
Absolutely.
So, and I think I was watching
the highest evolved piece of engineering.
Well, it is. It definitely is. And when you learn that, it's amazing. The bad part is that they don't follow the book. At least engineering, it's a little more mechanical. You can say this will definitely do this.
It's mathematical, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I think I watched Dr. Kildare. This is really aging myself. When I was a little kid, it was like one of the original doctor shows that was I'm sure hokey by standards, but
like Emergency for the fire.
Oh yes. Same. It wasn't quite as melodrama in those days. I think like it is now. It's pretty ridiculous, but. That being said, it just was that I wanted to do, and so. But I had a real weird course because I was going to get drafted out of Vietnam. It looked like because of my first year of college, they had that lottery, and that was the only lottery I won. Thing I think I got number 24, and they were going to draft to 50 that year. I'm like, great. I knew guys had gone, and I just didn't want to go to Vietnam, so I went in the Air Force. So I had 4 years there, and I was a lab tech because I scored well on whatever their tests. I did. Oh yeah, you can do what you want to do. And so I say, I'll be a lab tech. At least I won't be out in the jungle fighting. Right. Or I don't know if I was being in a plane or not, but so I was a lab tech for 4 years and then got out, and then I started working in labs around it, being a chief tech for one of the San Diego labs and stuff. But I did that for almost 15 years if you count my Air Force before I went to med school.
Oh wow.
So yeah, and then during that time I was riding, racing in the desert and doing stuff in Southern California. That was a gas. So.
Well, I wondered if it's, because the trauma, the ER, when you get a trauma, it come in, it's quite a scene, right?
Yeah.
I thought maybe the adrenaline of that is something that drew you to it. If you're a motocross guy, maybe you like that.
And I'm not in a trauma center now over these last few years, so it's a little more less chaotic. But I mean, it's a ballet. I mean, the guy comes in, you've got people that have assigned jobs, and you don't talk a lot. There's more from the patient telling you stuff, but it's if they're awake. But it's everybody does things, and you don't. It's just telepathy, and people just do their job, and boom, boom. It's
like I like TV where everyone's like yelling at each other down the passageway.
I liken it to a NASCAR pit stop.
They all hop over the wall and do their piece.
Yeah, I stand back. I give them the story. Here's what happened. We got on scene. This is what we found, and it's like, somebody's.
So you're like the crew chief.
Yeah, and everyone's doing their job. It's very cool to watch.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and it does get kind of, now that I'm out of that, so to speak, and I just more of the standard ER. It's a little more relaxed in some ways, but it's still really sick people, and you're intubating people, putting them, life support stuff like that. When we're hoping won't be happening more, but it is it's a little different, but it's not as chaotic in some ways because you see some bad injuries, but you learn a lot, and you realize how much the body can take because. Again, that hurry him, get him to the ER helps a lot because it's that golden hour they talk about. You want to get him in and get things started. So it's good to have a good crew behind you like that.
Sure.
Well, you seem like the perfect fit for what you're doing for our sport. Do you still love it as much as you do? Is the travel wearing on you?
Just this week or a couple weeks ago we were at Daytona. That's cross country flight too. It's just you never like the flights. But as soon as you get to the track, I'm just one of those. I'm kind of a people guy of guy, and I just love being around the crew and everybody that I know. And you're going, oh God, I got to get the rental car, and I got to go check in the hotel. And then once you're around everybody, it's like, oh hey, especially the day at the race.
And usually that doesn't always go smoothly.
Oh no,
there's always often your car's not there, the hotel was the wrong one, or there's multiple, or your flight was delayed, you missed your connection.
The AC doesn't work. Your room smells like smoke.
I swear.
But if everything goes to plan, that's like you would hope. That was an okay weekend of travel, but it usually doesn't go that way. Like in the winter, you get stuck in the Northeast. In the summer, there's thunder showers and storms.
At least 5 times I've gotten a room and I've gone in and somebody's been sleeping in the bed.
Really?
They gave you the wrong key,
Yeah, so I've gone in and the guy's laying in the bed. I'm like, whoa, and I had to go out.
I walked in on a couple in Vegas.
You just get in bed with him. That's what really makes sense.
I walked in on a couple in Vegas, got my room key, go into the bags, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, how you guys doing? Apparently pretty good. All right, wrong room.
They were
gave
in
me
bed?
a key. They were going at it.
No way.
I swear on my life. They gave me a room key.
Only GL has a story like that.
I went downstairs. I'm like, it's not my room. They're like, what, the key didn't work? I'm like, oh, it worked, but it's someone else.
Hey, that's your kind of social gathering.
Something else was, it was his social gathering. Something else was working.
I just forgot to tell you that was all pre-planned. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, no, I have walked in with people going, all right, not my room. That is weird.
So, Doc, what are the primary differences between what you would see come into the ER versus what you see at the track on the stadium floor at the Nationals? Aside from there's not, gnarly firemen bringing them in. Like,
studs like you. Yeah, I understand that. And the nurse will go, "Who is that guy? Yeah, he's kind of. I like that mustache." Well, in a real ER, I mean, you've got and that's one thing. It works great for being at the track. Is being an ER doc too. Is you, and I don't want definitely not putting down on any of the other docs. They all know what they're doing out there. Dr. Ryman Alexander or orthos, but even when we're there together, if they get a certain thing, they're like, "Oh, you go take care of this because it's more up my alley." With ER, we know a little bit of everything. So, it's one of those jack of all trades, master of none type of thing. Yeah. So whether you bring your kid in because he's sniffling or he's got a problem, or, you brought your grandpa and he's in there. I've taken care of many, from one to the other like I'd see in the ER. So just from the variety of what you see, you kind of get a good overall view of what's good and what's not good. So that helps them. I've diagnosed appendicitis on people and different things at the track, and just put my hands on them and say, no, you need to go to the hospital now. And it's just because you do it every day. So that translates pretty good with just the traveling that we do and the variety of stuff that we do. But in the ER, you still get, I do a lot of shoulders. I'm surprised how many, I don't do as many shoulders in the ER that I do on the track. That's kind of, I've learned a lot more on
reducing
the track.
them?
Reducing shoulders. And but a lot of times when I get hey, doc, there's a shoulder, because they knew I do them all the time. So we see a lot of that and a lot of ortho stuff, and we do get car wrecks that don't go to the trauma system. They just come in, or people bring their buddy over who got shot, things like
Drop
that.
them off at the door.
They're screech in the door and thump on the floor, and there's a guy there going, hi, and so you basically have to do a trauma, so you still do traumas, you just don't do them as in the normal format, and then sending them out. But so it's just a huge variety, and that's kind of good in a way, because you do feel comfortable with almost no matter what you see. It's not like I may know every last detail or the latest thing, what's happened in the last 6 months about whatever kind of condition, but at least you got a handle on it.
Yeah. It's like that saying, you got to go through those life lessons, and each one that's different makes you a better, well-rounded doc or person.
What is the biggest challenge you guys face on the stadium floors and national tracks?
I think the one thing we do, we get to people fast. That's one of our big pushes, and even now we still every week work on better track access. Supercross is always going to be an issue because the outsides we've got that pretty dialed in. They always get us a good ride, and this year's been phenomenal. Things have been smoother, and because even just little dirt clods on the ground can make a difference when you're riding. And I always tell them, it's not that I want a nice smooth ride. I'm not out there being cush.
When I got someone in the back with a broken femur, he wants those dirt clods gone.
Exactly. So we push that all the time, and to Feld's credit, they're real open to suggestions. They say what can we do better, that type of thing. So getting around, but the problem with Supercross is, as you know, too, the tracks vary by what the kind of stadium is. So the football stadiums are nice because they're big, but they're long and skinny relative, because they're a big rectangle, and you can only do so much side cuts. That's why now we see them coming in front of the start gate and back around. Yeah. So that limits our ability to get to certain places on the inside quickly. So, and that's always going to be a problem, but luckily we have a lot of people that help out. So that, and they're all, we talked about volunteers and things before, but the guys that volunteer like you were, they're seasoned people who know what they're doing, and we've got people who've been volunteers for almost 20 years now. Yeah. So it's just surprising how they hang on and they know what to do when you're on the floor like that. So we can get to people pretty quickly, but that's still evolving.
Yeah, and you try to reuse those same guys every year.
Yeah. We like I say, that's why everybody thinks volunteer means we just grab people, and we do have people that just come and want to check it out. We have 4 med students now. They're in med school right now. So Roger Koster's son is one of those, actually.
Is that right?
Yeah, Mika. Yeah, he's going to graduate this year from USC. Way to go, Mika. Good guy. And so he's been helping out for 4 years now. And so, but his role is not one of hands-on working, because when you're on the, don't have the experience yet, you have to be, like you guys are licensed paramedics, and so we make sure you have all your credentials. Then you can, and then once you've been there for a month or so of working, then you're kind of seasoned, you know what to do. Guys like Roger's son, they're out there just to get experience. Yeah. So they're always teamed up with one of our guys or one of the other medics. So they're not a hands-on person. So that's why
But that happens, and I think in most form of trades, like mechanics, shadow, experienced mechanic, whatever it may be.
Apprenticeships, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And what a great place to do that, because if you can learn not to panic in those situations, I really think that's going to make you a better, well-rounded physician, no matter what you're doing.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and like I said, we're not getting any younger, so having these 4 young bucks that are all really excited about it, and they all seem really sharp and doing a good job. We'll have some people that take over when I when I can't run on the track anymore, I'll just be pointing and say, hey, go get that guy, bring him over to me. But so it helps a lot having people out there. Outdoors especially is a little harder because it's a bigger area to cover. So, but it's also a little more open, so it's usually easier to get to. But we still same battles. We always fight getting tunnels. So that's I know at Paula last year we had a real nice tunnel set up, and that was one of my adamant we got to have kind of things. So and even the FIM through Supercross and then with MX Sports, and they're all ready to kind of help out and do that. So,
and you guys have some help with like spotters and that, right?
Oh, sure.
Because I know you guys are on the headset. Because I've been watching like first practice, and all of a sudden I see someone go down, and you've scared the crap out of me because you come flying by. But exactly what I thought is you can't be looking everywhere.
Right.
So someone's obviously giving you guys a cue, because I've seen you guys come by in a matter of like a couple seconds. You're already on the way up there.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised. You got your back, you can't see everything.
Sure.
And even at Supercross, you'd think you can see, but with all the jumps and all the
when you're on the ground, when you're on the floor,
yeah, you can't see. And so
and you're a little vertically challenged, so that doesn't help you either.
You're not too far behind me.
Hey, we're all in the same boat.
So that makes. That's why you see me. I'm the one guy who's loud on the podium because I need that extra look to see out there. But no, all the AMA guys are on headsets, and we're all on the same channel. Yeah. So we are on their main ops channel, I guess would be your operations stuff. So because they want to be able to, hey doc, we need you here. But we have a code system, and the other problem is you'd see yellow flags, and if no one's saying anything, it's like, well, is that something or not? Yeah. So there's a code system that we use, and it's an FIM thing too, where code 0 means if there's a yellow flag going, there's nothing going on. Like, top block bounced out, or guy just stalled his bike, or he just slid out and got back up. So they don't need medical. And then code 1, 2, and 3 is incrementally worse, where 3 would be maybe someone who's unconscious. So as soon as we hear that code, and that's given to us by the AMA people as well, more so than my own people. It's because they've all
got
those
the best
guys,
spots.
Yeah, and they're all over the track, and they're right where all the action is in each of those spots. So, and they know. I mean, so you'd think they're not medical, but they know right away, and so they can let us know. And then obviously my own people.
And in the pre-briefing, you guys have a track map, and each corner is numbered, so they can say code 3, turn 2, or section 2.
Exactly.
So then you guys know where to go.
And then our guys will. And we can't have everybody going to it either. So we have at least one of our people is going to be the first one there, and he's going to be on our radio. Okay, this is what I'm heading there now, so we know someone's going there to that spot. And then once we assess it, then we can decide whether it's a red flag or if we can get them off the track, and then work them on them off the track. But it's real quick, and that's the main thing is don't want to get them run over. And red flags are really more common. You probably noticed the last few years seems we have a lot more. But the problem is, too, is when a rider falls, even with a red flag, it takes probably 10 bikes going by before they've all got the red flag.
Right.
They've all received it as sensing, hey, because they don't see it, and they're still racing. So we're changing some things, more red flags in all the corners if we can get that out there to get the word out quicker.
Who usually makes that call?
It's usually it's always the race director per se, but I'm the one that if I say I need red flag, he's okay, there it is, red flag. So, but it's in conjunction. I say, hey, this is fine. And he'll say, hey, do we need a red flag? And no, we're about to ready to get him off. He's fine. So there's depending on what the situation is.
What I've obviously seen the red flags, and I've heard and people have said at times, well, it's gotten out of control, meaning we never had red flags, then there were more. Was that necessary? What to you, what determines what should be red flagged or not? Is it someone that's not moving?
Well, it's a combination of that. If they're unconscious, and for one, it's hard to assess them when the bikes are flying by, or it's louder. But if they're completely unconscious and we know they can't move, and if they're like almost off the track, then we could probably get the bikes around and we'll do that. And I know back in the day there'd be guys going right by you, and you almost in the middle of the track with an unconscious guy, and it was just never red. That was the attitude. Well, we'll just get them off and put tough blocks around or hold the bike up and get around them, but it's not ultimate.
And the sad truth is, riders don't really slow down or do anything.
No.
I was guilty. I remember probably blowing right by you, but you're so in the heat of the moment. Let's be honest, if you could gain a bike length, you did. Like everyone takes an opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Jake Weimer. I think he hit my elbow one time going by. But
I was going to say, I know you had to have been really close, and it's always easy to point fingers from the outside, but we've always said we want the sport to be safer. And I guess I just wanted to ask you what that question was.
Yeah, and like femur fractures, that's as soon as that's usually pretty easy to figure out right when you get there, but not always. But sometimes, as soon as you see it's something that he can't move enough to get off himself, and it's not really a good idea to, like even a femur fracture, you want to splint it right there.
Yeah, you don't want to drag him off.
Yeah, so even just moving the leg a little bit, that's going to. So in those cases, we just red flag, and so then they've gotten, and again, AMA is super receptive. They're like, okay, whatever you need, we'll do it. So
especially in a practice or time qualifying, it's like
yeah,
there's no harm in just stopping.
But even still, a live TV night, boom. We've had a couple times two in a night show that during the racing, so they're real good about that.
Yeah, that's I think you guys have done a good job with that. So, this is kind of a loaded question, but what body parts would be the most critical, right, that people need to protect themselves from?
Well, I guess when you're riding a bike, there's nothing that's not critical because you need everything to work.
But I mean, life-threatening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, a concussion can be bad because you can have bleeding. Although amazingly so, concussions are. And even the chance of doing a CAT scan for people with a concussion is like 95% normal, 98% normal. Is
that right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's rare to have a bleed from just a concussion. So it's like the boxing. You see a guy get knocked out, and the ref's up there, are you okay? And shaking him, yeah, okay. And he throws him back out there, and they start punching again. And he was out almost cold. So that's big. But obviously, the C-spine and back injuries are key. That's, we don't want to see those too often. And luckily we don't. But those are the things that, and that's changing a lot. So we have a whole, in the last 3 years, we're kind of been real on top of what the transports have been, because when you transport someone who's just basically laying flat and not moving, they get bed sores, basically pressure ulcers from laying on a backboard. So, and from your medic experience, they're getting away from C-spine collars, they're getting away from backboards a lot more. So that's why people see things, they go, why are you doing it this way? But that's the latest thing.
The hard spine board used to be the gold standard for anyone in a trauma. Now that's going away because it's causing problems. So, and
they find you self-splint really well. So even a neck injury, back injury, because back injuries are you're so covered with all muscle, your spine, you got your vertebrae, and everything's wrapped around there. So when you get injured in the swelling, it basically kind of locks itself in there. So that's why you can get away with a little more movement that you should not be able to in the old days, where you're like, oh my gosh, don't. And log rolling is hard too. That's why we have the latest board that splits in the middle, because you basically can scoop them up. So if you just need to get them out of there and then put them on what we use is called a vacuum mattress, and it's basically a giant bean bag with styrofoam in it, and you wrap them in like a mummy bag, like a sleeping bag, mummy bag, and put the vacuum on. They're locked in this big tube that's completely conformed to their body, so everything's equal when it's laying and no pressure.
Do you guys have that on the rig?
Yeah, we've had it for 3 years.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, we've been working with Wings of Life and some of the guys in Cleveland Clinic for that. So
that's probably almost a little bit of that similar theory to the eject system, right?
Right, yeah.
Where it's sort of the airbag, so instead of pulling or pushing, you're getting a mutual...
Pressure. Yeah, that's
I don't know how I'm
it's
trying
different
to word
in that sense, but that's more of a safer way to get the helmet off. But it's in the same vein of doing something where you don't know if they have a head injury, or excuse me, a neck injury. But that's one of my proudest moments, I think, in some ways, is getting that started years ago, because no one had even known about it, and I can't remember how I got hooked up with the guy that did it from England and invented that. And for about 2-3 years, I was giving them away free to the riders, just buying them, giving away to try them out. And once we saw how well they worked and they're easy to do, then the AMA made it a rule. So it's been in the rule books for like 7 years now. Yeah. That you have. So everybody you see on the line.
It's actually been longer than that.
Is it? Yeah.
Because in 2010, I think was the first year it was enforced.
Yeah. So when you look at
Gio with the stats.
I like
that was I crashed a lot.
He crashes so many times.
I crashed a lot. He scraped me off the track a few times, and that was the first year it was mandatory. I remember I went through a few.
Gio's down. Get the snow shovel. Scoop him up.
But you'll see they'll go down, and there'll be a guy in the AMA as he's counting down the backs of the bikes. You'll look at for everybody and see they have that little blue cap on there to make sure, because we've had like Kevin Windham one year. They say, "Hey, where's your eject?" And the gate was about to drop, and he's like, "Doc." So I always carry one in my mule, so we got within like 30 seconds, put it in. He was on the line. So, but they won't let you start unless you have it in there. So.
No, it's good. That was a very
and it's just another day. We just always looking for what can make it safer, and you're asking what kind of injuries too. But even just a simple wrist fracture can keep a guy out. You know that.
Sure.
I mean, it's amazing the little stuff that can cause problems just because you can't be on your A game when you're not, working at your best. So
yeah, I guess what I was leaning into was when you're looking at things that'll really potentially kill you. It's your head and your torso, right?
Yeah, well, the ABCs, you know that from your training. And first, you'll see we get there and our faces is in their helmet. I mean, that's the first thing you'll see. We'll be on the ground staring in. Then I want to see if he's breathing. I want to see if he's awake. So, and then circulation, I mean, obviously, if something's bleeding, you can see that. So you can get through those pretty quickly usually. And then the next step is to get them off, what's the safest way.
They've gone to circulation airway breathing now. It's like CAB instead of ABC, but it's the constantly changing, stuff. But my point there is, if you're looking at, okay, what is the most important protective gear I can wear? It's a helmet and it's a chest protector.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you take a big hit anywhere here or here, potentially, if it's big enough,
well, in the back too, I have a picture I put in slides when I do demos or videos, and it's a picture, and I won't mention the rider's name, but he's falling, and the foot peg is literally about to hit him right in the middle of his back, mid T-spine, and it's like, I don't think he had a chest protector, if I remember, but the thing was like, would you rather be in this condition with nothing on, just your shirt, or do you want a big chunk of plastic covering you? Or do you want me to hit you with a 2x4 across your chest without anything on there, or with a chest protector? And I've had guys in the past, I remember a rider that he went through the whoops and 2 times just smashed his chest against the handlebar, and then he thought he broke his sternum or whatever, and even if he hadn't, it didn't matter. He couldn't hold on anymore, so he couldn't ride for like 3 weeks. And all he needed was a chest protector, and he would have been back riding the next moto.
There was a great illustration of it. It was one of Rick Johnson's old videos he showed from Carlsbad. Do you remember this, where he went down off the start, and a guy was skidding to stop to miss him, and he slid, and his swing arm just nailed RJ in the back. And he had a full chest protector on. He goes, I got up, and I was fine.
Kept going. Right. So, I get that, I'm not, I get that I can't flow as well, or same thing with neck braces. It's to me, it protect your investment. They spend all this money doing all this training, all these diets and everything to try to get that last tenth of a second they can get, but they just throw it all away for just a simple something like a chest protector.
Yeah. Well, it was like with knee braces. I hated knee braces, but after I blew my knee out on 80s, doctors like, you got to wear something. And then once I got used to knee braces, it was like, now if I go to the track and I forget my knee braces, I feel like I cannot ride because I got so used to it. But if
you can adapt to anything,
sure. But in a perfect world, would you like to see sort of a standard for chest protectors and make it mandatory?
Yeah, I would like to see at least the chest protectors mandatory. Both your chest and back are protected, and the ones that go farther down the back are the better, just because it's longer, more protection is better. But they're getting more certified now, as far as, in the old days it was just a chunk of plastic, and you heard stories that they would crack and you could get cut, and they probably weren't as modernized as they are now, but it's with all the CE certification. I knew Liat was big about that in the day with their neck brace and then with their chest protector. So now everybody else is following and getting, I know Alpine Star is way on top of that. They have their own lab, and so all their stuff is certified to be able to take a certain kind of hit. So once that's going, then it makes it easier to say it's going to be certified, and from what I understand, it may be mandatory next year in FIM.
I hope so. Troy here at TLD finds his riders if they're not wearing something, chest protectors. So I like that.
Yeah, it's just simple stuff. And going back to knees back in the day, I mean, people would be out forever with knees. Their career would be over, or they'd never get back to where they were. And some of it's better surgery now too. I mean, ACL surgery is better, but with the knee braces, we just don't see a lot of knee injuries like we used to.
No, when I was racing, I went to. I kept hitting my chest on the handlebars, and I kept separating ribs, which it's not quite as bad as breaking them. But every time I'd take a deep breath, it would pop, and it was so annoying. So I just started wearing a front only because I felt like I didn't lose any mobility, or felt like I could still flow with the bike, but I had at least some protection. If I'm traveling this direction, I at least want to protect the front of me, right?
Sure.
So I felt like that was. For me, was a help. And then in 2002, when I had that big crash in Phoenix, I landed right on my face on that chest protector, and I attribute that to being able to get up and walk away.
Sure. Yeah, and again, if you hadn't, you'd probably been out for the season, or at least half the season. There was, your sponsorship is in jeopardy and this and that. So to me, that's just part of being a smart rider and protecting your investment, like all the other stuff you do. Is get as much as you can. And luckily, I see guys with the wrist base, knocking for who's it? All Sports Dynamics, and those guys, they've been out. They've had one for 15 years, I think now, if not
longer. Because now I can go and relate that. In 2003, I rode most of the outdoors with a wrist brace.
Yeah, and so again, it's just one of those things that the more you put on, the better chance you're going to survive that, because you're all going to crash. We all know that. I mean, it's just unfortunately part of the sport. If you ride, you're going to crash once, but
it's not if, it's when.
Yeah, if and when. So, but yeah, if they could just, I see guys out there now, and it was really encouraging when all the kids were the amateurs, you see everybody with a neck brace on, and I'm still. And one of the problems with this, and you're saying, will they be mandatory with everybody? But the injuries are so hard to document, and some are so few. Like with neck brace injuries or neck injuries with braces, if only one guy gets hurt every 2 to 3 years, then the numbers aren't there to be able to do. So you know how studies are. Even with this COVID virus, you got to look at how many people are really sick.
You need volume, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's millions of dollars. It's not a few hundred thousand. It's millions of dollars to do a study. So with the numbers as low as they are, I don't think we're ever going to be able to find whether it really work or not. And to me, just watching it on the track, watching guys crash week in, week out, I've seen some pretty bad. I know Swap from Transworld had a video of him. He coming the first turn at one of the races locally. He just nailed his head against the big giant Dozer tires. And just nailed it. And you see his head and I mean, wow. And he got back and kept riding. So I see those kind of things all the time. Like, to me, it's easy, no brainer. And again, the kids used to be wearing them like crazy, and all of a sudden the pros started less and less wearing them. Now hardly anybody wears them again. So I hope that's comes around again.
So you believe in the neck brace? Huh?
I still do. I wear mine all the time. I'm same thing. If I get the track and it wasn't there, I'd be like, I guess I'm not going to ride today.
Because I had a couple moments where it almost caused me to crash because I couldn't look up, I couldn't shift my body weight right, and I thought, man, it's not worth making me crash.
Well, I think the new ones have got, that's again, everything's about design and advancement. So all the things we used, even the chest protectors were kind of bulky, and they'd get under your arms and stuff. So everything.
They used to float the old ones,
So the new stuff's way better, and even the newer braces, I don't, of course, and I have a short neck, so the guys have those long, lanky necks. They don't have any problems, but goosenecks are. You see that I kind of laugh at some of the guys that even Travis Pastrana, he was one of those guys. He just was so tall, but not that we're jealous or anything. Of the tall guys.
Well, maybe a little
bit. But I have a real short neck, and I don't really notice it at all. And then it's a newer one, so they've trimmed them down a bit so they can get more range of motion. I have to really force myself to be able to touch the back, and for me that's pretty good, and they adjust height too. So I mean, that being said, it's just one of those things. If obviously not everybody's going to fit everybody the same, and you're going to have your thoughts about what it does to you when you ride, but that just should be something on your list at least to look at.
Of course. I mean, I tell everybody, it's like you just said, kind of prepare for the crash. What do you need? I'm kind of neutral on the neck braces because I don't wear one. But I definitely wouldn't tell someone, those are no good, don't wear it. I say, hey, man, you got to do your own research because it's not.
I haven't looked in a long time.
There isn't a lot of research. I guess that's the hard part.
There is research, but
how do you duplicate? Crashes are all so different. The dynamics are so different.
Well, the other thing is that I took away when I saw some testing results that just didn't convince me was they talked about a lot of if you're going to be paralyzed or sever the cord, it's usually impact the neck compressors. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. It's the axial loading is the problem because the braces, when they first came out, they said, they'll do flexion, extension, and side to lateral motion, and they said axial loading, which is basically diving in a pool, hitting your head straight down. That's the worst kind because you can't protect that with a neck brace.
That's what I saw.
Yeah. And I've been to South Africa, down your hometown there, and went to Liat and looked at their facility and saw all the testing and kind of went over their numbers, and just in helmet testing too, when they drop and they've got the helmet on and you can see the spike of the curve and watch the whole thing go in real time, that spine has been fractured in like 0.02 seconds. So in 20 milliseconds, that force has already gone through the spine, shattered the spine before it even can bend. So unfortunately, there's really nothing you can do about landing on the top of your head. So when you do a lawn dart, we call it too in our sport, so to speak, those are the most dangerous ones because but the flexion that's and help for.
A lot of times, like Ernesto, Button, Marshall.
James Marshall.
I saw that one that happened right in front of me.
That's kind of what what happened with those guys. And it's
James was a real bad flexion. And
it was?
That was why, if he had because I've seen reconstructions, computer-generated stuff of his body shape, size, the whole bit, and he had such a flexion that it went all the way over.
That was awful to watch.
We thought.
Did you see
I
it?
was in the stands.
I was also. I remember they were coming straight at where the riders seating were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's sad, and but I think again, you'll never know, and everybody can guess what they think, but in some cases it does help, I think, and to me the downside is less. And another, who was it when there's a picture that Guy B had out for Ryan Morris and Trey Kennard when they crashed, and you see Morris coming down on the back of Trey, and he's already squashed against his frame, tank, and his head's down, and the linkage is about to hit him right here in the back of the neck from Morris's bike, but the Liat was right there, and he landed hit the Liat with the engine frame and linkage. So if that hadn't been there, there's kind of unintended consequences, they call it, where if he hadn't had that, he probably would have went right into his neck. So that's a case where it wasn't working the way it was supposed to, but it was helpful. So there's good and bad about everything. So it's just seatbelts, they say in the old days. I don't want to die in a seatbelt.
If I go into a lake, I won't be able to get out.
Yeah. So there's all that, but obviously that's kind of there are probably a few times where it may not help. But so those movies on TV where the bad guy or the good guy goes in the water, and then I can't get my seatbelt off, and he's jumping at it. Right.
All right, let's say you're king for a day. You can make 3 different rule changes to make things safer in our sport. What would they be?
Definitely no whoops after the first turn, but I think that's probably that's pretty much assumed now. We got away from that, but probably, oh boy, I think widen the tracks between lanes, so for one, we can get through, but riders aren't going to jump into the other lane quite as much. And this is tough in Supercross because, as you know, we're talking about the length of football stadiums, but and like baseball stadiums are really good because they're kind of a pentagon and they're super wide, so you can make tracks turn, and there's always seems like all this extra room in there. Whereas, so I just maybe track design. We need to still work on some of the better ways to get in and get out of there.
And you're kind of fighting safety versus function in there in that sense, because what makes good racing is 180-degree turns.
Sure, and I'm all for. I get the riding part of it, because I.
But then, like you're saying, now you got because it's a 180 and it's real tight to this lane. You got the
a lot of time it's just a tough block separating that direction from that direction, and if someone goes down in that inner lane, you've now got to cross traffic to even get there.
Right, and I think mandatory safety equipment. There should be a minimum standard that we have. That's basically, obviously, they have the helmet. I mean, they have helmet and gloves and goggles, and boots, but that's kind of a no-brainer there. But I think definitely certain things like, again, neck braces, I don't think it's going to be hard to mandate because they're so hard to test. I mean, you can see functionally what they do, just like helmets, but I would like to see standardized testing better for equipment so we can say this one is good, we're going to use that. So I guess along with that.
Seems like it's so secretive.
I thought of that coming over here,
And to me, I hate that because I feel like, like when you go and buy some candy that's going to give you diabetes, it at least tells you everything in there that's going to give you diabetes. So you go buy a helmet, most kids are like, dude, that paint job is sick.
Yeah, and
it matches my gear.
I thought of the way over
and
here.
I'm like, no, don't put that back.
Well, and props to 6D, and I still wear their helmet because I think he came out with the first design and it was great, and I was kind of knew about it when it was starting. He had, what do you think about this? This is great because for 10 years we were talking about how stiff the helmets were getting, and people were getting concussions just falling at super low speeds. I'm like, I watched the guy, like, how did he get concussed doing that? So he was the first guy to kind of jump out of the mold and say we're going to make a better helmet, and that's hard to do in this kind of industry where people are suing left and right for helmet designs or whatever. So if something goes wrong, it's going to be blamed on the helmet. So once that was out, he had all his data and showed this is where it's rotational, which we were talking about, but nobody was doing anything about. That seems to be one of the bigger things than the direct hit. It's that knock and the boxer getting hit and spins his head. And all his data is out there, but unfortunately everybody else, and I would love to Troy and all the other guys, is let's get a standardized so all you guys can do the same test and show us how it works, because I've had guys promise me they'll show me their data and I never see it. So
I would actually love to get you some of the testing that they did. TLD here spent about $40,000 buying other brands of helmets, and they went to LA, third party, had them tested. and it's pretty shocking. Some of the results.
There's a difference, and they won't. But the problem is they don't want to. You're not going to bash the other guys necessarily. But at the same time, and again, his testing is probably very, descriptive to the millimeter of how far they drop and all that. But it may be a little different than the other guys' testing.
Sure, exactly.
So you can't take that data and compare it.
Like you said, it's not standardized.
It's not standardized. Yeah.
If some guys are better in some areas, they let you know about it and then just sweep the other stuff under the rug, and then everyone goes, my helmet's the safest. Well, what does that mean? And some people go, well, if you hit a light pole at 100 miles an hour, it probably wouldn't penetrate to your skull. I'm like, we're on a supercross track. We're not doing 100 miles an hour. There's no light poles.
Well, that's where we started.
So
with,
then
with
you
that
come,
problem.
and I think what you were saying when the shells were getting harder, and I don't know all this as factual, but I always try to do research. But I think a lot of it was because for a period of time, a lot of the top helmets and that were coming either from Japan or the Asian markets, and a lot of their testing was done to protect the guy on a street bike.
Exactly.
Well, even the DOT and Snell tests are designed for street bike helmets. So multiple impacts and punctures, which we don't really deal with multiple impacts.
We don't hit curbs. We don't hit stoplights. We don't, we just going to hit the ground and bounce. So I think that hard shell was going down the wrong road for our sport.
Right, and we were talking with some of the guys that there's one guy in particular named Tom that works. His job is to dissect helmets, and he designs the different testing and stuff. And so for years we've been online with this saying we need to change things, but unfortunately when you're not making the helmet you can't make any changes. Right. So we kind of been aware of this, but it's just one of the things we just keep pushing, and finally with 6D coming out now, everybody else looking at saying what would improve the sport is I still think everybody should at least get a tech helmet, they call it. So basically not the old style just styrofoam helmets and your EPS, but if you've got some rotational component in there whether it's MIPS or the dual foam, or some of them have now different ways that they rotate within, at least from what I'm getting back from my guys that do testing, that those helmets are still better than the old style. Sure. So at least do that. So I mean,
and I'll tell you one other thing that I found just being involved with some of the development on these helmets here is that EPS, as old school as it is, they tried every new product in the market. Nothing absorbs energy in a one-time impact like EPS.
Right.
They still went back to it, and they just thickened it up. They said, all right, well, then let's just put more in there in the high-impact areas.
And I'm sure they'll be able to mess with maybe like density and things like that.
There is multi-density, which they have. And then the MIPS is a huge component for the rotational stuff. And shell strength. So if people still, this is uneducated public, still think a DOT and Snell certification, well, that's what you got to have. That means it's a good helmet. Right. The CE certification is actually quite a bit better. Yeah. They're designed more for moto in Europe.
And it's a tougher form of testing that they do.
It is, but the ECE testing this next year, it got rid of the penetration test for some reason. We don't know why. So all the other ones still have a penetration where the sharp object, that one's going away for some reason with ECE, but they are all the other stuff.
Do you think?
Really to me, they should have a foot peg test at least. If you're going to not do a little pole, do a foot peg test.
But do you think because the sharp object? I mean, it's a sharp object. I mean, do we really need that in our sport in off-road applications? Well, because the sharpest thing you're going to hit's a rock or a foot peg.
Well, but on the track too, at different motocross tracks, there's sometimes stakes in the ground. Guys, even wood stakes can be a problem.
I remember they have to go shave all the tops off and all that.
Right, yeah, to make sure they're short, but they're still a sharp object when you land on them. So, I mean, I can see that. I have to look at why. I'm going to talk to my guy this next week and find what's the rationale for not doing the impact, the puncture part yet.
I wonder if it is because they do have to make the shell harder, and I know the standards over there where they can make a softer shell, it does make all the impacts from very low speed to quite high better. Yeah, right. The results are better. When you have to harden that shell up to withstand multiple impacts in the same place, because that's one of the DOT and Snell tests, is they pick it up, drop it on something, pick it up, drop it, same spot again.
Same spot, yeah. They do a single and a multi.
And then the puncture test where it's just dropped on a spike. If you don't have to worry about that spike test, well, now you can focus on the other things and make the shell a little softer and make it absorb energy at lower to mid-high speeds better.
Sure. And looking at that drop test, too, is people were saying they were gaming the test by knowing where they're going to hit the helmet. So you could make your shell, the ones you send to them, here's our ones to test. You could kind of make that area thicker, change it around. So it's, at least EC, I don't think they're a little more variety on that. So
but what TLD did, which I thought was great, is they looked at all the helmets that got sent back to them. When they would tell people, if you crash big in a helmet and impact that EPS, it needs to be replaced.
Sure.
If the shell's okay, we can reuse it, but we have to replace that EPS. And they started looking at where are the common hits taking place, and it was all the frontal lobe and all your occipital part back here. If you got spit off and went backwards and smacked your head, so that's where they increased where they've got the EPS. And so to me that was a scientific way. Okay, let's gather some data. Here's where all the hits are coming, or the vast majority. Let's make more, make improvements in those areas. So,
So I'm happy that at least we're going to that, because the first step was the hardest because the liability was higher. It's really taking a chance. So now that it forced all the other guys to step up their game and say, okay, now we're working on it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, for sure. If you look at the last
said that before
10 years, the game has changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
Just as far as people's knowledge, and the helmet companies, like you said, figuring out. Not like, hey, we're going to make a better helmet. At least they're like, we now have a roadmap on how to make better helmets. Or, like you said, thickening certain areas, trying everything, going back to EPS,
Yeah.
Yeah, you think all these new, they have the components that were the speed of the actual impact would stiffen it more, or
they
tried
that.
And it still didn't work any better than EPS.
They have, it's military stuff, and they tried that with chest protectors, and they actually still use it in some of their body armor applications.
Kind of thing,
But they tried it in the helmet, and EPS still outperformed it.
But they tried it.
No, it's great. And
it's like testing. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
I've given kudos to Bob Weber on this show a couple times.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Man, and his partner, I forget his name, but
Rob. Sorry, Rob. Robert. It's Robert, but I can't.
But no, they started the revolution, right? And it's made helmets way better across the board, I think.
And the next step would be, like I said, the next thing I'd want would be just solitary single testing that goes to everybody, so we know the numbers.
An even
apples to oranges. You can't have that.
Yeah.
And at least allow the general public to know what they're getting. A shiny paint job is not
right. It's almost like having the dietary information on the back of food. Every helmet should just have that.
Yeah. His was candy, though, because he must eat a lot of candy.
Yeah, he was candy. I was trying to go a little more moto and try to be a little more diet conscious. Sorry, GL.
Well, now that they have them at restaurants, have you ever done that?
Oh, yeah.
What was the one that spinach artichoke dip? I used to order that, and then one day I saw it. I was like, "Jeez, 1,200 calories. No, forget that."
It's like a blooming onion. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But I had no idea it was that unhealthy, and then I realized the ingredients. I'm like, oh, okay.
And then there you go.
So there was something I want to ask you. This might be getting off into the weeds a little bit, but it falls into the concussion category here. When you're looking at the anatomy and physiology of the brain and the head, right? You've got your brain is mush. Like, I don't know if people understand. Like, if you were to just pull it out and hold it, it would kind of just rip and fall into pieces.
Pretty much, yeah. It's very soft.
So it's kept inside your head. You have your skull. You have your dura mater, right, which is like a harder coating. Hard mother, I think, is what that translates to in Latin.
He did his training.
He
learned. He listened.
Your meninges, right, the arachnid fibers, and then your pia mater, right? These are the things, and then inside of that is all your cerebrospinal fluid, and that's what holds your brain in place. Yeah. Those little
sloshes around,
arachnid fibers, or whatever they're called, which look like spider webs, is what they're called, that, and then the fluid, and then the two surfaces. When you hit something, right, your head stops, your skull stops, your brain moves, hits the front of the skull. That's the first injury, and then it can bounce back and hit the back. That's the contra coup injury. Right. I've heard, and this is something that they didn't really discuss much in medic school. I've asked around about it, but those fibers stretch. Is that correct? Yeah. And so that's why your second concussion, if it happens in the same way, it could happen easier, and so on and so on.
Well, that too, but the makeup of the actual brain cells themselves change. And the problem is when you get that hit, the edema that comes on, it's like you hit your arm and it starts to swell, not from bruising necessarily, but just you sprain your ankle and it just gets swollen. Mm-hmm. Your body's trying to, in its own mind, fix that, and it overreacts. So when your brain gets hit and all those fibers are still there, but it makes everything else kind of like you're saying turn to mush, but it impacts those. They start swelling, and your body sends all these factors. Calcium's released. There's all these bradykinin and all these other oddball things. And that's actually similar in a lot of different injuries. That input of all those factors are what does a lot of the damage. It actually
changes the makeup of those materials.
Yeah, so the material is changing, and also because of the ions and things going, it actually causes more damage. So that's why it just takes time for all that to clear up. I kind of tell riders when you get hurt, the other thing is all those synapses aren't really touching. They're basically just like your fingers almost there, but not quite. The sparks are going, kind of TV little thing, spark. And when you get hit, that shearing force shears all that stuff and rips it. And now this one's closer to this one. This one may not be touching. So now they're sparking in the wrong direction. That's why you're so goofy when you got a concussion, because things aren't, and you're talking about a global scale of this, or at least in one big section, your brain's telling you, I see that picture over there, but it's not equating to what I'm really seeing, and that's why you have memory loss, and so all those things. So this isn't real physiologically, but I always tell people you have to wait for all that to kind of work its way back, because things will find their way back. It's just like any nerve injury. As long as you don't cut the nerve, it's just smashed or anything. Generally, it's that pathway still there. It'll refire and it'll burn itself in and get back to normal. But there's so many other things, and that's why some of the concussion studies are working on all these different medications and different things, calcium channel blockers. There's all these other studies and luckily there's more research in concussions and a lot of other things now because of the NFL and everything. All the hype.
It's become a very sensitive.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like ours is different than theirs is like multiple. I don't know what you'd rate those impacts, but it's not as big as ours.
That take multiple impacts. So there's a different type of helmet style too.
Ours are less frequent but bigger. Yeah, I would say.
Well, look at someone like Muhammad Ali. I mean, that was just from repetitive.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've heard some talk, and this will probably get me in trouble for talking about, but there are a lot of docs that don't believe that a lot of this stuff we see with the NFL guys is related to their injuries. It's stuff they would get anyway, because a lot of guys have depression when they retire. A lot of guys have substance abuse. We still get plenty of people with Alzheimer's anyway, and Parkinson's. So the numbers sometimes they say are a little bit skewed, and this guy that started all this had a lot of research behind him, so they're still looking at it all. But
everybody's different too, right? I mean, one guy can take a hit and nothing happens to him. Another guy, it's devastating. Same hit.
Yeah, same idea. But the things we do know is you don't want to get repetitive injuries. You want to wait it out till you're better, and that's what we do with our concussion testing. Is they go through the same kind of protocol they would at the NFL, and we have a whole neurologist, Dr. Ryman's like my guru for that. He has his own office now set up since he's semi-retired, and actually I am too. I'm down to
he had all his knee done, hip redone.
We all had. Yeah, we had. Alexander's been busy. He's been working on us a lot, getting us back into shape.
I actually saw Ryman because both my kids. My son broke his arm on a skateboard, and my daughter broke both her arms. And I'm like walking in there, and it's like, yep, now you're taking care of my kids. It was me a few years ago, and it's done full circle. And he's like, oh, by the way, I'm semi-retired. I'm going to have my hip replaced, my knee replaced, but you can still get me on my cell phone.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, that's one thing good about him and our guys. We're available. We're on call. And, where you're going to get a doctor is going to answer you at 2 in the morning if we're up. But usually I'm at work, so I can answer it.
I don't know if there's another surgeon who's worked on more riders in the sport than him, huh?
Probably so.
Maybe Dr. Ting would be close.
I was about to say I know a couple names that pop up but even then I
was Ryman's first guy.
Were you?
Yeah.
His office is like a motocross shrine. I mean, there's jerseys on every wall of every room.
And Alexander now too. His office is full.
Yeah, he was in Temecula originally, and then when I did my shoulder in 2001, I ended up seeing Ryman, and then Chad Reed called me when he did his shoulder and said, "Hey, who did you use?" I said, Ryman, he's in Temecula, he's down the road. And then next thing I go in there, and Ryman's like, man, I don't know. Now I'm like the shoulder surgery to motocross riders, and then it was knees and wrists and everything.
Wow. Okay, so here's a question. This is something that I used to never, I think I mentioned this to you. I used to never consider, if I was going out riding, anything about the location of it, right? And then after I went to medic school and it started to sink in a little bit, I consider, okay, how far am I from, is there access to me from where I'm at, for the fire department, for an ambulance? Can a helicopter land here? Where's the nearest trauma center? Like, these are things I really consider now.
Sure.
And I still like riding at Fox Raceway now, because the fire department is literally across the street.
Yeah, right there.
And
see how he thinks now.
And Milestone, there used to be Riverside Community. It was a trauma center right there. So I thought, okay, these are good places to be, or Arrowhead's right there. But you never think about that. Yeah. And if you go to Glamis or you go to Johnson Valley or wherever you live, if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you have a big one.
Yeah, we ride out at Lake Marina, Crowell Canyon area out there where Jeremy has a track in that area too. And you're out in the boonies, you're nowhere there. And it doesn't, I know guys will just go ride by themselves, and I don't quite get that. Tracks are a little different, because if I call, hey, all your buddies, we're all going riding today, and half of them can't make it, whatever. But at least when I get there, I'll know somebody.
Yeah.
You end up, or you park next to somebody. So if you got hurt, at least there's somebody there that can, at least take care of stuff. But to go completely alone to an outside, like to the desert or out to the mountains and, ride completely by yourself not probably the smartest thing to do, because you can't be seen, you can't be heard. And some of those areas have no cell coverage. So you say, I'll bring my phone with me and I can call if I get hurt.
You need that spot deal.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to go that route, but again, if you're unconscious, you can't activate it. But that'll get you an immediate emergency. If you hit the button, they'll come running.
Well, also, you set a time in and out. If you can set a time in and out on the thing, if you don't check back in, it looks for you.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
And it'll see you're probably been in the same spot for an hour.
Right.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like a lot of people don't have that. So
no, and I just you do a femur and a pelvis, you could bleed out. You get internal bleeding. Heart attack.
I thought
I really think about
we were supposed to encourage people to ride. You're turning people off right now. They're like, Ping's got a good point.
I'm just saying, think about these things. Just be cognizant of them. I'm trying to bring up things that are going to make you guys safer when you're out riding. So just things that you should think of. I never thought about it at all.
Well, when you're young, you're invincible.
I was at Beaumont in places you couldn't even,
get a chopper to.
No, you couldn't.
Yeah. Chicken's out there, though.
Jerry Dostal, when he broke his neck, I was with him, and we were out in the middle of nowhere up in Beaumont, and luckily there was a pad where they could land a helicopter. The fire department came. I rode down to them. I'm like, there's no way you guys can get up there with a litter. Like, we can't carry him out. It has to be a helicopter. And it was dusk, and they're like, okay, it's going to be tight. I don't know if we can get it. And they landed and grabbed him and got him out. But I thought, man, 30 minutes later, I don't know what we would have done.
Yeah, just
he
make
had
sure
a good
you have
outcome.
somebody with you. At least he had somebody with him. That was the main thing in his being. But if you've been by yourself, and I remember that too. I had to go riding out near I lived in Modesto area when I was in the Air Force. And
okay.
Got my first bike, and I'm riding down these little trails behind us, and all by myself, just going, hey, I'm having fun.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Same thing. You don't think about it.
Yeah. And if you are going to go to a track by yourself, like you said, introduce yourself to the guy parked next to you. Hey, dude, I'm going to go ride. My keys are here. If you see me, laid out
it's
over
a buddy
there.
system, because he might say, "Hey, same thing." If you
sure.
Well, it is nice about the moto community, right? Because everybody does pretty much feel like a family.
Yeah, totally.
That is nice about
for
it.
the most part.
That's why we all do this, because it's part of the family, and it's once you're in it, it's you don't want to go anywhere else.
we go. I told you, I enjoy trail riding and that, we go to, like you said, isolated areas, no cell service, in areas where you couldn't land a chopper or whatever. And now, we didn't used to think about it, but someone said to me, you'll get stranded once and once only, because the next time you go, I'll have everything. So I made sure I had tubes, and you go and you get it flat, and all of a sudden you're like, I didn't bring a tire spoon.
Right.
well, shit, now I'm screwed. You got a stick? How are we going to get this tire?
But then, have a moose.
But then
I have mooses all the time.
But then you realize the same thing goes with a medical thing.
Yeah.
You know, we've been where someone had their neck cut on a vine, and you know.
Oh yeah,
if you don't
this just happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that?
We also had. I've had actually one of our buddies who's the TLD rep. He broke his humerus up in the mountains there when it snowed by Corona up top there. Same thing. We were like, shit, if that was worse, you know, what would we have done? But fortunately, we realized at that point where the nearest place was, how to get help.
Sure.
One of us had gone down the road, but there was a group of us. But yeah, once you go through those experiences, you realize, like you said, you got to be, aware of it.
Yeah, I generally carry a bag, kind of a go-to bag with all the stuff in it. I think one of these riders, I can't mention his name, but he's still around, a French guy, still lives here. But, and he cut his hand at Paula. He was like, he was having guys training some kids, and here, I'll show you how to do this. And he cut his hand open and like.
Was he going through whoops in his tennis shoes?
No, I think, he was in gear.
Okay.
But it was the same thing. He's like, and it was funny because I just gotten there. I'm going, okay, I have stuff to sew you up. Do I sew you up, or do I go ride and just say you go to the hospital?
You go to the hospital. Yeah, you're like, I'm not getting paid for this, bud.
So I stayed and sewed him up. So I did the right thing.
That guy likes to show people how to go through whoops. That's his thing.
One of the questions I know that we all had was, if you were to suggest, like, you're going to go ride, what sort of emergency pack would you suggest, for people like us that ride?
Yeah, well, obviously, a track's a little different, but bring stuff with you. So, it doesn't hurt to have one of those splints. pick them up on eBay or Amazon.
Splint or something.
Some kind of splint. And like on ours, the main thing I carry, not a lot of junk sometimes, but the biggest thing is just several big ace wraps, a couple big wads of gauze, and a splint, because that'll cover it. Yeah, so if you got a cut, you just wrap it as tight as you can with that, stop the bleeding, that type of thing. If it is something broken, you can use the splint and ace wrap to at least get it in place. So you can get it back on the bike or whatever, how get them out of there, or at least stabilize it. That to me is like just a minimum thing. Then if you want Band-Aids and Neosporin or a bottle of betadine, and the stuff I always have because I have a pretty big bag I bring with me, including suture kits, so I can do suturing out there. But that's to me just a minimum, because those you could stuff that in a fanny pack. Just the one thing's flat enough, and the other's a couple ace wraps, a couple bags, and that's all you need. And but the rest you got just for your riding stuff. But you need a fanny pack at least to carry stuff. But at the track, you don't. The good news is you're going to get a medic there, so they're going to have what you need.
Well, that's in Southern California. Most of the world, if you go down at a track, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I guess
in South Africa, if you eat shit at the practice track, all bets are off, buddy.
Yeah, well,
good luck.
Well, you guys have asked me stuff like that, and it's the same thing. Just have that basic stuff. So if someone's bleeding, and to me, it's the airway, breathing, that type of thing. But circulation, our job is to make sure you don't bleed to death. So if you got a bleeder, it's all compression. And people always get freaking. They start putting stuff on, but you just stick your finger on what's bleeding. It's going to stop. So it's all pressure points for a lot of that.
So the guys here made a visor that underneath it has it's all black, and then there's some lines for your name, emergency contact number, and blood type. And they were asking me what else would be good to have on that.
Well, you can get rid of the blood type. You don't need that.
Not necessary.
That's old school, because if you need a blood transfusion, I used to be a lab tech back in my old days in the Air Force, no one's going to, if you need blood, you're going to get type O negative. O negative, because type specific, you have to cross match. So there's a half-hour procedure you go through to make sure the blood's compatible. So unless you're bleeding, seriously, and they can't, they'll just give you O negative. So you don't really need your blood type on there.
Okay.
So that you can save that for something else.
Well, so from a medic's perspective, any kind of medical history, do you have any allergies to anything, and what medications do you take?
Yep.
And then a contact number and name, right? Like those would be...
That's probably the main thing, because they want to know who they can call, and they want to know if I'm going to give you something, what can I give you without hurting you? Or if you're on blood thinners, that's where medication comes in. Or even if you just say, I'm on blood thinners, because again, with head injury, that's a big thing. Because that's the big, everybody's on blood thinners now, all the commercials about,
the emergency contact can usually tell you if the guy's hit his head, things that he can't recall either. You know what I mean? If you got a concussion, they're asking you questions, you're like, I don't even know where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, and they won't take the time, if it's a critical patient, to call them. They're going to call that person en route and go, hey, we've got so-and-so, we're headed to the hospital.
But they need to know your meds that you're on, because if they're going to give you something that may interact with that, or the blood thinners is really key too, because that's those, when you pick up somebody, especially old grandpa who fell down, it's like, did you hit your head? Yeah, or are you on blood thinners? That's the second thing.
Or just a skin tear and it's bleeding like Niagara Falls. You're like, what's going on? Is there anything else you can, that from your perspective?
That's probably the basics. I always laugh when I see the blood type, because it's on all the movies and all the shows, but you really don't need that. I mean, I guess, because even if it's a weird one, it doesn't matter. They're going to have to find you the blood anyway, so then they got to test it first.
What advice would you give riders if they get hurt at a track or on a trail, or if they come across someone who's hurt?
Don't do too much too soon. If the main thing, like, you're looking at your CBAs or ABCs, I like ABCs, kids remember that better. But, if is he breathing, he's talking to you. If he's unconscious, then don't move him. Keep everybody around. Just keep him. Worst thing is to sit the guy up and, start trying to, hey, what's going on? Slap him around or whatever. If he's your buddy, I guess you could do that. But I would do it to you. But I would do it to But I mean, seriously, it's just want to make sure that he's, if he's not conscious, leave him there until he wakes up. And if he's breathing, if he's not breathing, then that's where we recommend people all get certified in CPR. It's pretty simple to do, and all the communities have places to go for that. If you do have to rescue breathing, obviously that's going to be the most serious situation if he's not breathing. But just don't find out, wake the guy up. If he's awake, say, hey, what's your name? Where are you? And don't do anything too soon. If he does seem like he's really out of it, he can't move, then just leave him where he's at and call 911 type of thing.
Yeah, and that's what I have is, first of all, 911.
Yeah, don't try to do it a lot yourself.
If he's legitimately hurt, start that 911 system, get that process going, leave his helmet on.
Because a lot of times, if you're, say, someone like myself who doesn't have a lot of background in the medical field, just on that phone call, you realize that they help you coach they coach you through doing the things that you can do while you're there.
Exactly.
And I think that helps a lot too for people just to stay focused and not panic.
Yeah, even if it's a CPR, they'll tell you, okay, here's what you want to do. Here's how you're going to find these points. You're going to push at this rate. I mean, they'll really walk you through it.
Right.
Something like this, just for folks who are looking for some basic stuff, call 911. Do not move them until they're conscious, and you can ask them, hey, what hurts? Where are you hurt? If they say neck, back, or any of that, even push down their spine, any of this hurt. If it does, again, don't move them. Leave helmet on if there's any neck pain at all until he's conscious and with it enough to give you a good answer on that. Because sometimes if he wakes up and he doesn't know what happened where he is, he might not tell you.
Yeah.
He might not be with it enough to tell you what hurts,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. So if they're concussed, again, leave the helmet on, don't move them. Work on those history, allergies, meds that he has if he's conscious enough to tell you that so that you can pass that along when they get there. And then start, 911 will guide you through the rest of it, I think.
Yeah,
is there anything else you can...
That's pretty much it, because the idea is, and the helmet thing's important too, because and on the track guys are always, that's the first thing they want to do when they crash, is
take the helmet off.
Yeah. For one, it's not an AMA, it's not good because you're on a live track, so they don't want you to take the helmet off. But until you know what the other injuries are, it's important. Now, if he's awake enough, he says, I feel fine, and he wants to take his helmet, no big deal. But if he's unconscious, some people just feel more comfortable if I can see his face better and take the helmet off. But if you can see that he's breathing, just like we do, we put our face in there and look, and just leave the helmet off unless you need to take it off.
And then the one caveat to that would be if his airway is not clear and you've got to get to the airway, which, again, I don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah, well, that's why we have the eject system, because if that were the case, or even if people's unconscious and we don't know, and we have something going on, there's bleeding, that's something you can get it off quicker. Unfortunately, riders, I've had tracks in the days call me, how do I get that eject system to put in the helmet? But I said, well, your medics have to know how to use it. So it doesn't do any good having it if you don't know how to use it. So.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to my next question. I've encouraged tracks to do this, and I kind of wish this was something that maybe the Brett Downey Safety Foundation would pursue a little bit more, is to have a standardized track pack. Because at least in Southern California, and again, I can't take the pulse on every track around the country or world, but there's always, almost always an EMT here. And if there's not an EMT on site, there is a fireman, there's a nurse, there's a doctor, there's, there's someone who has some medical training. And if it's a critical situation, I've seen bee stings even, so just having Benadryl and being able to do IM Benadryl.
Remember your dad?
Will Puffy have an incident?
No,
you can.
I may have mentioned it on the show, but it was Millville, I think 03. And my dad walked back to the whoops, at Millville, and
the whoop monster.
And I guess he stood on a beehive that had fallen off or something. But anyway, the bees went nuts on him and was stinging him left, right, and center. So anyway, after practice, I get back to the truck, and it's kind of a funny story because, like, two people come running up and they're like, dude, I don't know what happened, but there was some dudes beating the shit out of your dad. And he's in the medical unit. And I'm like, what? I'm like, freaking Gerald. So I go hauling ass over there. And I'm like, what happened? And he's like, oh, man, bees. I'm like, what? And Bodnar's like, he looked at me like, why are you so confused? I'm like, no, my dad gonna fight. And he's like, no. Turns out these guys were swatting bees. But from a distance, people thought like the fans were beating my dad up, and he got stung all over that day.
He was his face was probably twice as big as it normally is.
Well, I was gonna say he's got a big round face, but I came in and he just was swollen red.
So nobody knew Puffy because they would have known he wouldn't have put up with somebody beating on him.
Yeah. Well, that's the news that I got when I was, because usually my dad's already come back to come and shit all over me about how pathetic I was, and I'm like, hey, he's not even here.
Yeah, that was actually a good thing because we took care of him. We had all the meds we needed, everything.
I was actually going to say, it's funny because you always think a rider's going to be the one in the truck, but random situation like that.
One good thing is we can take care of all our
Was he having a reaction, or was it
it wasn't so much the allergic reaction, it was more the venom reaction, so he was really getting swollen. He was red everywhere.
So it stings everywhere.
But you still treat it the same, and everything's, after about an hour, everything kind of calmed down, so we didn't have to rush to the hospital.
I know that you've helped quite a few photographers and others that have been injured at the track.
Yeah, they seem to. Photographers are.
They're always getting,
but not just from bikes. Just in general, they get.
Well, they get hit with a rock.
How about Don's story when he jumped over the hay bale at like Hangtown or something?
Oh, I thought about when we were talking about the stakes.
Yeah.
And I can say this because we're not got to be confidential, but he posted it all on his website or on his magazine. But he was,
don't break HIPAA violations.
I'm not bringing any HIPAA stuff.
But he was taking a picture of the first turn at Hangtown. And so it's that big long, and he had his knee up on one of the hay bales, and he slid off when he was done, and he slid down. He had shorts on, and the
wooden stake
it had split by being hammered. It was sharp. It went up into his groin area. And all I know is I'm back after the first moto, and he comes walking up to this kind of sheepish grin on his face, looked really pale. I said, "Doc, I think I need your help." And I look, I see this blood running down his legs. Oh, my God. So, again, he's told everybody about it, so I'm good with this. But he had actually got the stake up in his groin, up through the testicle, and basically did a lot of damage there. So we cleaned it all out and stitched it up.
That makes me cringe just hearing it.
At that time, we didn't have ultrasound, so I sent him over to get an ultrasound, but we basically fixed the whole thing other than that and make sure there wasn't anything left inside there. And so, he said, what did he say? I left the sack in Sacramento. that was his line on the editorial. So, yeah, we take care of a lot of people. And that's kind of, I mean, we're getting off topic, but that's,
No, but it's one of those things you don't always think about.
It's a traveling family. And the truck driver's another one. They're on the road all the time. They can't get to the doctor. They can't see somebody. Like, hey, you're sick, you need to go.
So you're like a physician as well, but this, before the race starts.
Something like this could happen at a local track with a local flagger or whatever, right? And so that's what I'm getting at here with the track kit. So if you had SAM splint gauze rolls, some Benadryl,
ACE wrap rolls too, yeah.
ACE wrap rolls, yep. Trauma shears, maybe some type of tourniquet, IV start kit, maybe an epinephrine.
And the tourniquets and people get real kind of scared about that, but that is the life-saving thing, and you see it on TV and all that kind of stuff. But grab a belt and all, they work, but not that well. The new, there's like 5 different brands of the tourniquets, the Cats and all those brands, but they're real cheap. You can get them on Amazon or for a few bucks, really, and to have that in and they take no space at all, and that's something that'll save somebody's life, and they're really easy to use, and all you got is crank it till it stops bleeding, and you'll save a life.
Military guys have tourniquets built into their pants.
Really?
Yeah.
So they can do their own.
They can just do their own right then and there.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah. And the one other thing that I've got in here is, and these are expensive, but a defibrillator.
AEDs, because we got a new one in our rig just not so long, and just the cheap, least expensive, because they all work, they're all FDA certified, is like less than $1,000, I think.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So
because they were $15-$20 at a point, maybe a decade or two
real
ago.
defibrillators. I mean, but now the AEDs, and basically those are the ones. We always joke about all these shows and the guys fighting the bad guys, and he suddenly stops breathing and like doing CPR.
Clear.
And he wakes up, or not even that, just CPR, and the guy finally wakes up, spits out a little bit, and then goes on fighting. That doesn't happen. If someone's doing that, their life is on the line. Yeah. But that's what you look like when you've had an irregular heartbeat. So if you have AFib and BFib, other things, and it goes into the danger rhythm where it's not giving you any pulse, you drop dead right there. Those are the ones, if you have an AED and you shock them, they will wake up like, hi, what happened, type thing, if you catch them early. And that's why most companies in their offices have them, because it is expensive, but if you really want to, if you ride all the time and you're out there with a lot of people, you may use it on somebody you don't even know.
I just think that a track to have. This is a track.
Yeah. Like if you want to be open to the public, these are some of the basics you have to have.
A lot of communities in their the drugstores, all these places, they have AED stations and pretty much everywhere you go now, and that's, to me, that should be done.
I mean, the AHA, their guideline is that the 2 most important things are early CPR and early defibrillation when it's required. So, anyway, I would love to see that becoming more common. I don't know that it'll happen or not, but maybe the Brett Downey Safety Foundation can look into it.
If you keep pushing, eventually things happen.
It's just the more people ask about it, the more likely they're going to get it.
Has there been an incident at a race that made you nervous where you're like, oh boy, this is bad?
That's a hard one to say. I mean, anytime anybody...
What was the one, I'm brain farting on his name, it was back east, and he hit his neck on the crossbar pad.
Yeah, I don't want to say his name, but and again,
a rider.
And I know it's okay to talk about it because his family's been fine with that. But yeah, he hit the crossbar and tore his trachea, and that's a real unusual injury. And initially, we didn't know if it was his face blew up really quickly because of edema. And you get air under the skin.
It was sub-Q emphysema, right?
Exactly,
is what it was. Yeah.
That's the clinical name. But yeah, so it was a real sudden thing, and that was really spooky because you're limited what will work and what won't work in that case, and without like getting him in the scanner and things, or doing an airway type of thing. And so you try not to. And in his case, it was one of those things where it was better to do less than more. Where some, I know even the ER, some of my doctors are more aggressive than others in doing certain things. And a lot of times you wait, let's see where he is, and he was really maintaining his own really well, surprisingly. So
basically, he got a tear in his airway, and so the air was leaking out into his neck and face. I wasn't there. I heard the stories. I was like, ooh, that would have been pucker factor.
Yeah, it was definitely scary. And in fact, my nurse was going, God, Dr. Bodnar, you were so calm. I'm like, well, yeah, inside I was probably,
My back's like a water slide, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you have to analyze and what, he's doing, he can whisper, he's breathing, his oxygen's doing good. He looks bad, but, we got time. So I kind of let the medics know what I expected en route to do, and they did what they needed to do en route, and it worked well when it got here. Has there ever been a call you wrode in with them? Or sent someone? No, and that's always a tough one, because in the old days we didn't, we didn't have a way to get, we didn't have a rig and all that, so that I may have wanted to do that at times, but at the same time, then I'm not at the track. Yeah. So and once they leave, and this is also a kind of medical legal thing too, is. Now there's a federal law that finally took them years to get it over with, but there's a law that allows us, with malpractice and everything. So we're completely covered now. Where before we'd kind of skid the guidelines a little bit, but everybody does it. All the football teams, baseball teams, they have traveling physicians. But once you leave your group, then you're no longer
the medical authority.
Yeah. So if I give the patient to you and say, okay, here he is, this is what he have, and you're taking him off, your protocol takes over from there. So anything we do there at the scene is fine, but once he's there, unless most of them say, if you travel with us, then we will do it. We'll continue off. You go with us. But generally, I've totally faith in you guys. So that's one of the things I also, and we know most of the medics over the years now, because we go to the tracks over and over, and we get the same guys a lot. That and some of them are literally a block, like Humphreys Stadium.
Well, the thing that scares me is, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but a lot of the ambulance medics, the transport medics, are new. Because that isn't a career, typically. That's the starting point for a lot of people. Right. And they'll go from there to the fire department, or they'll maybe transition to a PA program or something, but that's where they get their experience. So you could have a really new paramedic in the back of that rig with a very critical call.
Yeah, but I think most of the places we go, there's at least one or two of the guys are well seasoned. It's not like a lot. I know, I get that, and I think of that too when I see some of the guys that are pretty young. But then there's also two or three guys that are real experienced. So usually the ones that are taking them are pretty well experienced, and you can gauge that too when you see them. Like you can tell if they seem like their back of their pants are a little wet too. But
and that's so that to that point. Like, this is why I think that the Alpine Stars medical rig is so critical, because without it, we're left now with just a couple of ambulances like they used to have, and potentially very young new medics who haven't seen that kind of trauma or that kind of.
And also, I mean, you can go and this is my opinion. You can study, to be a doctor or a ER nurse or whoever you want to be. But if you haven't been around the sport at all, like, I feel like when I see a guy go down, I'm not a doctor, but a lot of times I look at someone, I'm like, I think that's the rotator cuff. Or, yep, that's a collarbone. Or, because we've seen it happen enough. But if you've got someone that's never been around it, they're like, wait, what happened? If you say, I cased the triple, they're, what?
Right, yeah.
I came up short in a jump. Oh, okay. Oh, so it was an impact.
Well,
when you got people that understand the sport.
The new medic. What was the mechanism of injury?
Yeah.
But the good thing is because we've done this for a long time, and we have kind of rapport with the different medics in the different cities that we go to, we do get a lot of the same people back. So they kind of are already getting it a lot. And we'll go like, raise your hand if you know anything about dirt bikes, and then for a while it was never anybody, and now it's at least half of them. I ride, or I know these. I've been here. This is my third time or my fourth time. So at least that part we've got. But again, talking about when they go to the hospital, if it were something that I didn't think that they can handle what they're doing, I would just go with them. Obviously that's going to come first, and I've got enough staff that can.
Well, I was going to say, you also have nurses, or is Monica Ramsey still coming to a lot of them?
Oh, yeah.
So you could sell her, or as somebody.
Yeah. So if we had to, but yeah, it's just usually if it's for a nurse, I don't know if they probably would say, no, you're not going to come with us because it's not appropriate. If you're the doctor, somehow you get the gold card, I guess, you get the all access pass when you go with them. But yeah, if we have to, we would. But most of the time, it's more just
You've packaged them and stabilized them.
Yeah, we did what needed to be done. Yeah. Now it's just get them over there, and their guys can take it from there.
Is it harder for you, because I've found this, it's really easy for me on calls when I don't know people to compartmentalize it, do my job, regardless of the outcome. I obviously do my best, but when it's done, whether it's a CPR that didn't have a positive outcome or whatever it is, by the time I'm back to the station, it's not bothering me anymore.
You're over with it, yeah.
And I've had really just one incident where I knew somebody, and man, it's very difficult to get past.
Yeah, that's a good question.
You're friends with all these guys. You've been around really so long.
Yeah, even James Marshall and stuff, when he got hurt, we'd been working on them all that week and the week before with the shoulder, and it's like, so you really get to know, and again, for 20 years, there's people I know really personally, and it's so hard. That's one of the hardest parts about this is when someone gets hurt that you really know well, and you're like, but again, all of them we know well in some way or form, but the others are really, especially if it's something really catastrophic, it's just, it's hard to get away from that being the doctor and just kind of throw it over your shoulder and you're done with it and go on to the next one. It's something you think about.
Yeah, and when I worked with you guys, we just had a couple of minor things, but I even felt it then, like, I don't want to do this anymore, because if somebody that I know well goes down, like, I don't want to have to be the guy working on him. I don't think I'm the best guy for it. You know?
And we try, and same thing in all mess. You always tell or in this case, any patient that, hey, okay, we're going to get you taken care of. We're going to get through this. And when it's something really bad, and you kind of already know the outcome in the back of your mind, you still want to stay as positive as you can, because you never know how things are going to turn. Sure. So but in the back of your mind, it's a tough. And we debrief a little bit after that and say, is everybody okay? Because we all take it to heart too, and it is family. So that's again probably the hardest job.
It's tough.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I saw a bad car crash. We'd just come up, and when I saw what I saw, I was just like, I could never be in the medical field. I knew right there and then I was not cut out for it.
It's interesting though, because when you, at least for me, I'm just able to just go to work like a car mechanic. You just go, okay, what's going on?
It's very mechanical, but there's still things that get you, like little kids.
Yeah.
And, I remember when I was doing a lot of trauma, there's every now and then you get something, and you got to tell the family we're real sorry, and it really gets on you, and it's tough. But again, you think all the good things you've done.
I was going to say,
somebody fixed this, or a guy. If he hadn't gone in, he would have got. We've had a couple of instances where it's like, dude, you need to go in. It had nothing to do, just a rider. A family or a photographer, one of those guys. But and they went, oh man, I'm sure glad you came in, because this would have happened or that would have happened. That happens probably every year or something, and that makes you feel okay. Well, that's why I'm here.
Just to help.
Let's fix the family.
Yeah, but it still doesn't make it any easier. There's still that
it's tough.
connection, and I don't know. It's very weird. I hope that I never have to work on anyone else I know. Obviously I would jump in. And
you do. It's sort of that memory comes right there, and you do what you got to do.
You still go to work, but when it's over, there's usually no emotion attached to it. And I found that afterwards, it was just like this wave of this personal connection that I had, and it changed it completely.
Yep, for sure.
So anyway, I have to touch on this, or probably get chewed up. What are your thoughts on this China virus, Wuhan China virus?
Throw that in. I hope that America, and we're just talking about the different people in the different countries, and that's all we've got to go on. So Italy's got a different type of, their grouping of people is different. They have bigger families. They live closer together. So in that, even though they're spread out, but so you get these chunks of people that are dying that are a lot older and in bigger groups. So I'm hoping the U.S. that, because if we're taking it right, and like I said, we didn't come today until we cleaned everything here, and there's only just the three of us practically. So, but stay away from people for the next few weeks to see what goes on, because we can't. I got to go to. I was there the night before. I'll be there tonight and this weekend, or tomorrow night. And the problem is the testing kits are still not there yet, and we can test you for flu. And actually, if you got the flu, that's a good thing, because if you got the flu,
good news, you got the flu,
and we can find that out in 30 minutes.
You can use all that toilet paper you bought.
Exactly. You give it to somebody else.
You can even blow your nose.
But it's for now. I think everybody needs to just kind of hunker in place for now and just stay away from people as much as you can until we see. And if when the testing's out, probably about a week, I think it looks like we're going to have enough that we can test everybody. But now, if you're not that sick, we just tell you to go home, and just like a regular cold, stay away from people and stay at home.
What's interesting, we were talking about, you said Italy, where they sort of larger families group together. It's kind of an older population that it's affecting. There's a lot of smoking in that culture.
Exactly.
Same with China, a lot of smoking over there, and it's a respiratory issue. But kind of the heavy comorbidity factor we have here is obesity and diabetes.
and
Right,
hypertension. But yeah,
that's
and
US
diabetes is probably
issues.
one of the biggest ones too, along with the obesity. But your immune system doesn't work as well when you have all that. So that's the problem. Is how does your immune system react to this? And if you're 25 and healthy, yeah, there's been a few cases of really young people dying just suddenly, but that happens even with the flu. So
Yeah,
it is pretty random and not as big. But everybody else, it's kind of a shot in the arm. And unfortunately, in America, we're not the healthiest population around there. And if you look at my son was just he's got his EMT so he could work with me. He's been working for a long time there. He showed me a graph. The guys were telling me how the gross products of GMP, how much. So America's always at the top, and then the number of people has the worst healthcare is up there. So we're like the worst in everything. So it's unfortunate because our lifestyle, we don't take care of ourselves, and it's. I mean, we have a lot of people who take real good care. There's a lot of people out there who are exercising and do that, but overall, with all the junk food and the diabetes, that's probably one of the bigger problems. Man. Yeah,
sit in an airport or sit somewhere in a public place and just watch and go, how many people would be overweight or obese? It's staggering.
Well, and then when you go to Europe, we go to the nations or something, and it's like, man, look at all these healthy. Yeah, they're smoking.
But they're smoking. Yeah.
Yeah, true. But they you're not obese. They don't have as much diabetes is one of the big things. It just does so many things to your vascular system, your immune system.
Yeah. You know what I think?
Well, because when you're obese, then you have likely to get diabetes. You're likely to have hypertension. So.
Don't want those obese people next to you on the plane. They make the seats small and the people bigger.
That was the other we're talking about. That's been and the airlines. I'm going to throw that out there. They won't like this, but they're not going to give you your money back. They're going to give you credit for the next flight.
Yeah.
And if that was a one-time thing this year, you're flying somewhere, you just probably lost that money. But to me, I think they should just in the picture that's all that's going on is refund everybody your money. But I don't think they can afford
I just fought with that for about 3 weeks or 2 weeks and just actually got my money back.
You actually got the money back?
Yeah.
Oh, good for you. I haven't started yet because I've got like 5 flights already made, and they say wait for a few more days till everybody's calmed down, and then we'll.
Well, anyway, hopefully the hysteria calms down and the toilet paper holds out.
I'll have you call. You can do my.
I'm a pit bull when I get into that. Yeah.
Well, hey, Doc, thank you for coming in.
No problem.
The impact that you've had on this sport, I think, is massive, and I don't know that people understand that, and I don't know that you've maybe been told thank you enough. So thank you. As a guy who was kind of, like I said, I rode through that transition, and to see what it went from to what it has become is awesome.
Well, I said it when Eddie was here, so I'll say it in front of you, but I think one of the coolest things from a rider standpoint is you never, you only really appreciate someone like yourself when you need them, if that makes sense. And I said it earlier, but I remember kind of waking up and, not knowing who you are, where you're at, and then just seeing that face. And it's like, hey, GL, you're okay, and you got someone to talk to. And I think there's a lot to be said about that, just that familiar face and that comfortability of seeing someone. So thanks for scraping me up a few times over the years.
I'm glad I didn't scare you.
Remember, I used to see this guy too often for a while, especially in the early days of Supercross. So I used to go on the way to track walk. I'd go to what was the Asterix medical unit and say, I'm coming to say hi. It's the only time I plan to see you all weekend. Bye.
Yeah, we still have a few guys that do that.
I would always, and it became like superstitious. I'd always go say hi and say, I hope I don't see you again. No offense, but I hope I don't see you again.
Yeah, and I have some guys that don't want to say hi because they think that's superstitious. Yeah. So, it's a superstitious sport, as you know.
Oh, so. Yeah. What are you talking about? I can only put my left sock on first when I still to this day.
No, it's one of those things we want to keep it going forever, and obviously I'm not going to be here forever either. So that's why we're trying to get the newer people, and we just let people know we're always trying to make the sport better, and whatever we can keep doing, we're going to keep doing it. So we like the support, and like I say, buy a lot of Alpine Star because they're my main sponsor.
Yeah. Well, how can people help if they want it? Does Road Recovery do?
I wanted to mention that we were talking about too. You're saying where you can go, and if you're hurt or you're riding is Road Recovery. I don't know if it's out for the public, but the riders have it and it's available. They made a really good rider's manual. We gave them some input, and they help a lot with people that are injured, getting them to the right people, to the right doctor, especially if it's catastrophic injuries too, and that's their main focus. But they have a whole section on all the tracks and where the trauma centers that we would send you to are. Cool. So that's and we're trying to even get that fine-tuned into because even though they're a trauma center, they have to have neurosurgery, they have to have all the main things to be a level 1 trauma center. But even within that, some places are more specialized for one thing or the other. So we want to make sure we're getting the right people, because maybe it's better to fly them in a helicopter a little bit farther if we need to. But it's a really good resource, so maybe we'll try to get that available. But yeah, donate to your people like Road Recovery. They help us out all the time.
Do they have a specific fund for the unit, medical unit?
Yeah, they help us every year. So it's all what they get. So if you donate
general fund.
It's That's general fund, just our road recovery, and that help out a lot. And like I say, support the sponsors. If you see our sponsors at the track, especially from you guys' point of view, I always tell the riders, thank us, not me personally, but thank our medical team on the podium at least once, and put the word Alpine Star in there, because just like any other sponsor, they'd like to hear their name said. But not how it is. You get up there and you're all excited you won, and and then you got your list you're trying to read off down. So I'd like to thank, and I'll go through my list. But just tell the guys that support us thanks, and if you can buy their products, and Alpine Stars, they make great stuff too. I mean, Troy Lee does too. I mean, he's all about the safety too. So
he doesn't make boots, so you got to have boots.
Oh, there you go. But just support the sport, and if you donate, that's awesome. RTAR is a good place to go start.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, your passion for the sport's obvious, and we sure appreciate it. So thanks for coming on.
Guys. Yeah, like having a good space.
All right. Hey, we'll be back to wrap up the show. It's been Doc Bodnar. Stay tuned.
WP is more than a store. We're truck and Jeep experts. From wheel and tire upgrades to full custom builds, 4WP has you covered. Do your rig right. Shop online or find your store at 4WP.com.
Yeah. I want nights where it feels so nice. Something in a photo. Right now. Let's do this right. Go slow out of moonlight. It's still shining. One day I'ma let go. One day I'ma let go. Everyone's using me, but maybe that's something I like. Yeah, I've been on something since last month, but I'm feeling alright. Maybe I'm blind to see. Maybe I'm losing my mind. So I've been on something since last month, but I don't feel alright. It's me against myself. It's me against myself. I'm starting to black out, yeah. I've been staring at the stars. Running from myself, I'm running from myself. I'm starting to black out, yeah. I've been staring at the stars. I don't wanna keep running, I don't wanna keep
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Big thank you to Eddie Casillas and Dr. Bodnar for coming in and just sharing some ideas on safety with us. We're going to have maybe some more shows here down the road. That we've got a fitness show coming up. We're going to bring in some different trainers and talk about nutrition, training for racing professionally at an amateur level, maybe just general fitness, all kinds of stuff. So it's going to be pretty interesting. And maybe we can get like some more engineer types in here and talk about helmet design and some of those things as well, just in smaller segments and doses down the road. But I think that stuff's interesting, and it's good for all of us to learn and know more and just be better informed. I'm going to jump right into our 4-Wheel Parts Get At Me Q&A. 4-Wheel Parts is our one-stop shop for all things off-road. So if you've got a truck or a rig you're looking to buff out, put something new on, get over there and check those guys out. They do awesome work and sell some amazing products, anything you really want at all. Donnie, what do we have today for questions?
Yeah, what did you guys do? What was your routine for recovery when you had an injury or surgery?
And you want to go first?
Sure. I think it varied. Obviously, when you're younger, you just tend to try to listen to what you're told. So as a kid in South Africa, my first couple of injuries was just, I don't think there was a lot of physical therapy per se back then, but as you get older, you start learning, what also works for you. And I think for a lot of people, they got information from doctors after a sprain or a surgery or something like, hey, just go home, kick your feet up and take it easy. And I kind of learned pretty quickly from other races that was bad advice for an athlete. For the average person, let it heal, you'll go back to work. But that's sometimes when you can be a little more, not aggressive, but just keep the body going. And if you break your wrist, there's nothing stopping you from being on your spin bike every day. And I would suggest that to people, because not only does it keep your fitness up, but that'll speed up the healing process. There's no doubt about it. What I wish I would have done was actually listen to the doctors a little bit more. I think I tried to rush things back, and I think that's a little bit in the moto mentality that if you take your time, you're a pussy. So I wish I had listened sometimes and actually taken that time off and gone and finished through that physical therapy process. A lot of times I just know how I am. I'd go a couple times, I know what it is, and that was a waste of time, and then I'll just move on. And I haven't been able to go back and look if that made a difference, but I think I would have wished that I'd actually listened more. I think that goes for a lot of us. And the other thing was I learned quickly, don't sit around and do nothing. Like, keep yourself going. One, I think mentally for a racer, it's good. And secondly, it really helps with recovery and just keeping your ground fitness.
Yeah, my story would be kind of the same. The first knee surgery I had, I was a senior in high school, and I basically I had one of those passive movement machines, that just kept your knee bending. It was ACL I did. And I would ice it and lay in that thing and watch TV and eat for like months. Probably 2 months. That was all I did. Did nothing, and
you can't afford that.
No, well, you get yourself into a hole all the way around, mentally, physically. That's not doing anything good for your knee, just laying there like a big old blob of crap. So as I got further down in my career and started just to know more, have better influences, people that were giving me better advice, it was, man, whatever. As soon as that incision's closed, which right away you're doing ice, you're doing. If you're smart, you're going into a hyperbaric chamber, which increases healing time or decreases healing time. Cryo chambers to get swelling down. There's a lot of stuff you can do if you're aggressive about it, and you're willing to go the extra mile.
Well, you could also even use the power dot pretty soon, just to get swelling out.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you change the settings further on to stimulate muscle, but a lot of times in the beginning you can do it on a lighter dose just to help circulate that swelling out of an inflamed area.
Just contracting those muscles will push fluid and swelling out and bring in new blood, which helps speed healing. So there's a lot of that stuff. And again, as soon as the incision was healed, when it was my knees, the last 2 that I had done, I was in a pool swimming.
Yeah.
And even if I just kept that leg straight and kind of kicked with the others and swam with my upper body, just moving and getting my heart pumping and pumping blood it's
important.
It sped healing time. It was good for my brain. So there's a lot of stuff you can do.
I'm riding my Aerodyne twice a day, every day.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's because you're not a savage.
I'm not a savage.
So if you do that, then go right to ice to get the swelling down, and then power dot, then ice again? I mean, money.
Yeah, I do that.
Maybe even heat and ice. That's something that's actually proven really helpful.
Because of my connections, I go through quite a few therapy routines throughout the day.
Good.
So you can see I'm hopping around here pretty good, actually.
And the trend is to do more quicker. You know what I mean? So
that's what
as soon as you can get it to bend around or to pedal, get on a spin bike and start spinning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the same thing you tell, because a lot of times people go, but a doctor said I could do some damage. Your body usually tells you where your limit is. I mean, if you're doing something and it's painful every time you put your foot down, well, that's your body saying, stop doing that, idiot. Do something else. But, swimming is good because there's no pounding. We all know you're buoyant, you're light.
Yes, especially the fatter you are, which after you lay around for a while, just float in that pool.
The extra saltwater pool, so you really float.
I could just picture the guys doing their rehab there on a lilo with their knee.
Yeah, all right.
What else we got?
Well, there's a question that's topical with this virus that's going around. How will this affect the motocross business? Maybe even business in general, but really lasting effects in the motocross industry.
Well, while we were just at a break here, Troy Lee came in himself and was talking a little bit about the craziness. Like his biggest importers are Spain, Italy, and they do a lot of business with him. And they're going, look, I don't know when we're going to be able to pay you. We sent everyone home for 2 weeks. This is going to have repercussions for months and months, maybe even years.
Its effect. I think what this has shown is this has been one of the situations that it's affected everyone. It's not the poor. It's not the wealthy. This has affected people from the very bottom to the very top, and it's also something we haven't quite seen of this magnitude. I mean, I know just speaking from our dealership standpoint, it's been like a ghost town there the last couple of days. I mean, since people have been told to stay away from public gatherings. I mean, we drove up to Corona. Anyone knows Southern California. When we get the 91, there's a big traffic jam this morning. We breezed in. So there's just a lot of people not out and about at the moment. So it's a little bit scary in the sense of the longer this goes on, the more it's going to affect the industry. I think you could even see companies closing, maybe teams shutting down. I mean, there really is some big potential implications. I think the saving grace for us right now is maybe with this, let's call it a bit of panic, this 2-week sort of self-quarantining that I think a lot of people are trying to do. If that helps bring the numbers down, get the test, get this under control, that's the best case scenario, is to get through this quickly. If it's something that just continues to spread and becomes a slightly bigger issue longer term, I think it could be pretty scary to think about.
Yeah.
Just for everything, not just the sport, but obviously then you're talking about just life.
Yeah, if this thing continues to go on, unless it drops off significantly in 2 to 3 weeks, I think for sure you're probably not going to see these last 2 rounds happen at all, which is what I've got my fingers crossed for. And you may not see the Nationals happen this year. And if you do, you might see teams that just go, we're not going. That's some of the chatter that we, even just at the break here, we're kind of hearing it. Just I keep going, oh, that'll never happen. And then you hear something and you're like, oh, that's really happening? Like, wow.
Well, big companies have come to a grinding halt. Let's look at the stock market. I mean, you look at everything, you go, wow, shit is real. Like, it's almost biblical. Like, there's some things
I don't think there's been anything like this since the plague. And this won't kill nearly as many people, but as far as the hysteria and the repercussions of it, what has there been since
we still don't know, right? Because, okay, they're saying bunker in place for 2 weeks, but is 2 weeks going to be enough?
I guess I'm just got my fingers crossed, because just as the world, you just hope that this is going to help. You know, we've seen how quickly it can spread and how worldwide it is. I think that's one of the other things that people haven't, in the past, other diseases came from more isolated areas. This went worldwide very quickly. Whether it was South Africa, Australia, South America, Europe, Asia, whatever.
This is also a product of good times. In other words, there's a lot of money right now. Business has been good, so more people are traveling and more people are moving about. And
the world's a smaller place.
It's a smaller place, for sure.
But
what you can watch is what's going on in Europe, because we're a week to 2 weeks behind them. So you can kind of see what they're doing, and their culture is different than ours a little bit, but some of the things they do that are affecting them. We don't do, but we do
Thinking
other
about
things.
your article with KTM every time. They're culturally different.
A lot of diesel exhaust, a lot of cigarettes.
Little tiny rooms.
They're in really small rooms.
Believe it or not, the deodorant company Axe, their sales suck over there.
Hey, GL, on the way home, GL, I'm going to put a barrier in the truck between us, so don't talk to me or anything.
That's cool by me, man. You actually do me a favor.
Well, listen, we're making light of it, but it is serious for people who are vulnerable to it.
It's going to be interesting. It really is. I mean, obviously I'm involved with the outdoors. We're involved with this. We've just seen, like Troy Lee today is pretty quiet. The dealership, so I feel like there's a lot of moving parts in this industry. And then there's the whole other level, which is, if you're Feld or MX Sports, I mean, I'm sure people are like, what's happening? We don't know right now. Yeah. Like, I got to imagine there's a lot of uncertainty, and
that's the problem.
Guessing.
Yeah, that's the real problem is
there's no roadmap of how to get through this right now.
Yeah, it's like a day by day.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, anyway, bunker down, stay safe. We're going to try to keep these shows coming.
Or just go out and ride your bike. If you're going to be paranoid, might as well be out with a friend or two. Just go.
Or listen to all the Whiskey Throttle shows, the past ones.
Yeah, listen. And
you know what? That's great advice, Donnie.
Yeah, if you missed one, go catch up on it. We're going to keep them coming. Get over to our store, too, and look at some of the new merchandise we've got going. The website, delayed again. Waiting to hear back from our designer on what the hell is happening. Any minute now, though, I'm assured. And we're going to have a lot of that new merchandise up here soon as well. So check that out. Thank you guys for supporting the show. Big thank you to Yamaha, PowerDot, Method Race Wheels, Troy Lee Designs, SKDA, Dunlop 4-Wheel Parts, Adidas Pro Circuit, Nihilo Concepts, Seat Concepts, Fire Department Coffee, Specialized in OGO, and a little special thanks to Paleo Ranch Foods and Langston Motorsports. Thank you guys for supporting the show. We really appreciate all of our sponsors. We appreciate everybody watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.